Chapter 624. Poplar Fruit's fight was so loud that it attracted the attention of many villagers. At this time, because everyone had just woken up, the construction of the school had not started so early. Many young and strong people of the Hmong village also gathered around. In addition to Poplar Fruit and Meng Sanhua's fight, Xiongda and Xiong were also interested. The two big men ran to the middle of the field and performed wrestling for everyone. It was called a performance because the two guys did not use their martial arts. It was purely a competition of strength. However, this kind of competition of strength still received a lot of applause. Everyone liked to see the two big men twisting into a ball. Their fists hit the flesh, but they did not cry out in pain. Their feet poked the ground, shaking the earth and mountains. They were even more imposing than Poplar Fruit's fight. In the end, Xiong was hugged and fell by Xiongda. He was not angry. He stood up with Xiongda, cupped his hands and thanked everyone happily. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. It was like a street performer. Uncle Jisher, come on. Uncle Jisher, come on. Quite a few Xiong village boys around the age of 10 started to shout. Under their lead, a group of little brats also started to shout along, and even Chi-Chi was giggling as she shouted. Xiong Jisher was only 10 years older than them, but his seniority was there, so he was called uncle. His Miaodao was the best among the younger generation. Xiong Kahu planned to teach him the technique of two-handed Miaodao when Xiong Jisher was older. Although he did not learn the technique of two-handed Miaodao, Xiong Jisher's Miaodao skill was not bad. At least in the eyes of the children who practiced with him. He was an idol who could be super awesome in 10 minutes. Xiong Jisher scratched his head and finally pushed himself out. He hesitated and said, "Only me? It's not good to play with a knife alone." He still wanted to find an opponent, but none of the children of Xiong village present could beat him. They all knew that they were not strong enough to fight him. Xiong Jisher had to turn to Poplar Fruit who was holding Kiki and said honestly, "Brother Yang, let's have a try?" Xiong Jisher took the unsharpened Miaodao used for practice from the hands of the few jumping children, and looked at Yanghua anxiously. "Okay." Poplar Fruit smiled, put down Kiki and walked up. His knife was still in the room, and it was not suitable to be used here. Poplar Fruit was not afraid of hurting Xiong Jisher, but he was worried that some reckless child would accidentally touch it. Yanghua took a Miaodao from Xiong Jisher's hand, and weighed it in his hand. He felt that it was a little uncomfortable. It wasn't that he didn't recognize the knife, but he felt that this knife was too light. It was no different from holding a bamboo as thick as a finger. "Do you have a heavier one?" Poplar Fruit asked, but they all shook their heads. Poplar Fruit had to give up. This time, Poplar Fruit did not bully Xiong Jisher. Like Xiong Jisher, he only held a Miaodao and stood facing each other. He had no interest in the fight between the two barbarians. Yin Luqing, who was a little sleepy, saw Poplar Fruit and the young man from Miao standing on the field with a knife in his hand. He suddenly became energetic. With his eyes wide open, Yin Luqing grabbed the railing on the second floor and watched with rapt attention. Dang dang. There were no fancy knife moves. Xiong Jisher and Poplar Fruit waved their Miaodao and knocked it against each other. The dense sounds of blades colliding seemed to be strung together into a beautiful symphony. At this time, there was little meaning in competing. Moreover, Xiong Jisher also knew that he was no match for Poplar Fruit. With so many people watching, everyone wanted to have fun. Therefore, the Miaodao competition between Poplar Fruit and Xiong Jisher was more like an exhibition match. Knife techniques were different from sword techniques. There were not so many delicate moves in knife techniques. Even straight thrusts and diagonal thrusts were rare. Slashing, chopping, and flipping moves were the main characters. Therefore, the Miaodao duel was less gorgeous and more concise. In addition to reaction speed and moves, there was also strength and adaptability. Therefore, although Poplar Fruit and Xiong Jisher were performing, this kind of excitement was similar to the real fight between Poplar Fruit and Meng Sanhua. Too slow. Boring. Meng Sanhua curled his lips and shook his head as he said to Hiwenjua. Seeing Poplar Fruit go on stage again, his hands were itching again. Hiwenjua ignored him. He and the Miao people cheered and applauded Poplar Fruit and the young Miao man. Interesting. Yin Luqing, who had not come down from the second floor, did not cheer and applaud, nor did he complain like Meng Sanhua. Instead, he nodded with interest. The layman watched the show, while the expert watched the skill. Yin Luqing was an expert in using knives. Moreover, Poplar Fruit and Xiong Jisher were moving so slowly. Naturally, he could see the Miaodao moves. The speed of the knife is uniform, the footwork is steady, and the focus is mostly on the front part of the blade. This was similar to what Yin Luqing knew before. If that's all, then it can't beat my Padao. Yin Liuqing's Padao Kung Fu was passed down in his family. The Padao was characterized by compact movements and a clear rhythm. It was not like the Miaodao where its speed fluctuated greatly. Yin Luqing was very confident in his swordsmanship. Moreover, after actual combat training, he had long surpassed his master. This time he came because of old master Xiong Kehu. He wanted to see the king of swords who had the best swordsmanship among the 10 soldier kings of the southwest. It's a pity that the old master drank too much yesterday and hasn't woken up yet. Yin Luqing felt a little regretful. He looked around at the onlookers below, and did not see Xiong Kehu. Yin Luqing knew that Poplar Fruit and Xiong Kehu must have gone easy on them. However, Yin Luqing felt that Poplar Fruit had only learned swordsmanship from old master Xiong Kehu for less than half a month. No matter how good he was, he could not be that good. He still wanted to wait until old master Xiong Kehu woke up to ask for advice. However, he did not realize that Poplar Fruit was a monster who had the strength of a master in less than 2 years of practicing martial arts. Even if he had only learned swordsmanship for less than half a month, Poplar Fruit's two-handed Miaodao now had the strength to fight with old master Xiong Kehu. Yin Luqing saw that Poplar Fruit, who was waving his Miaodao slowly in the field, was not even 1/10 of Poplar Fruit's real two-handed Miaodao. If he knew, he probably could not help but run down and pester Poplar Fruit to spar. While he was thinking, Yang Gua and Xiong Jisher's fight also came to an end. The two of them didn't have a clear winner, but in the end, they clashed their sabers against each other with cupped fists. Good. Good. Other than Meng Sanhua, who felt very bored, Xiong Da and Xiong Er all applauded. The happiest and most excited were the children of Xiong Village. The Miaodao was the symbol of Xiong Village in their hearts. Seeing the wonderful performance of the Miaodao, they all proudly puffed out their little chests and cheered. It was early in the morning. Perhaps the people of Miao Village were just watching the competition of martial arts for fun. However, who would have thought that the strength and beauty of Chinese martial arts had already sown the seeds of spring in these children's hearts? These seeds would really take root and sprout one day in the future. Chapter 625. Open all these boxes. Fellow countrymen, let me tell you, this cable is wrong. You have to buy it again. The power is too low. When so many computers are turned on, it will definitely burn the fuse. You have to buy it. After Kai Simin woke up, the ancestral hall became lively. Several agile women were arranged to help him. Kai Simin struck while the iron was hot. He first opened all the computers and checked them one by one. Fat Dragon also got up from the bed and happily followed behind this buddy. He looked at him as if he was watching a monkey show. In fact, the two of them had been friends for a long time. They chatted very enthusiastically on the internet. If it weren't for the fact that they were drunk yesterday, the two technical geeks would probably have a long talk. Kai Simin was 1.8 meters tall and thin. Under his big old-fashioned black-rimmed glasses, there were heavy bags. His palms were thick, and his knuckles were full of thick calluses. Fat Dragon and him were two completely different types. Fat Dragon was a typical southerner. He was short, and his white and fat body was more than 100 pounds. When the two of them stood together, all the characteristics of a human's body were included. Fat Dragon, get out of my way. You are a technical staff, a typical coding farmer. What are you doing here? Kai Simin moved a computer over, and was about to test it under the desk lamp. When he turned around, he saw Fat Dragon standing there like a ghost and said angrily, "You can't leave me alone." "Hee, I'm just looking to see if there's anyone who needs my help," Fat Dragon said with a smile. "But I don't like what you said. What do you mean by I'm a coding farmer? I'm the best hacker in China in the 21st century. After saying that, Fat Dragon felt that his tone was a bit arrogant, so he added, "Well, one of them." "One of them?" Kai Simin sneered. "You verified it yourself, right?" He finally understood why a genius like Kai Simin would fail in business again and again. His temper was as if he had eaten gunpowder. At least it's better than you. Fat Dragon rolled his eyes and said, do you know how many loopholes there are in your comet system? It's bloated and not easy to use. If I were to write it, I could at least save half of the memory space. You. Kai Simin was a little angry. He threw off the canvas cap on his head and said angrily, your phone is designed like a brick. It's too heavy to hold in your hand, and you're afraid of hitting the flowers and plants when you throw it out. I really don't understand why someone would make such a stupid design. Originally, this sentence was very hurtful, but it just so happened to poke Fat Dragon's itch. Instead of getting angry, he actually laughed. He took out his precious brick phone, shamelessly moved forward, and said with a smile, Brother Kai, you're right. I'm not as good as you when it comes to hardware. Can you help me take a look? See if there's anything that can be improved? Kai Simin's expression eased up a lot, but her tone was still foul. Humph. Wait a moment, I'll let you have a look after I check this one. Fat Dragon was watching from the side. He rolled his eyes and said with a smile, Brother Kai, I have a suggestion. Would you like to hear it? He actually used honorifics. Kai Simin didn't notice the change in tone. His hands deftly dismantled the computer's screws while he asked without raising his head, what suggestion? Brother Kai, you're really not doing well in Beijing. You still live in a basement. You won't be able to become Steve Jobs in another 10 years. Fat Dragon didn't wait for Kai Simin to lose his temper. He immediately said, why don't you come to Guangdong province? With your skills and my brain, your company will definitely be popular. You say it as if I don't have a brain. Kai Simin murmured to himself. However, he didn't become angry this time because the Fat Dragon was right. Fat Dragon was the leader of the hacker team for a few years. At that time, there were only 3 or 4 people in the team. Later, he roped in like-minded friends one by one from home and abroad. Only then did it grow to the size of 7 or 8 people today. This also made Fat Dragon develop a strange habit. When he sees talents, he wants to take them into his harem, into his company. Kai Simin shook his head and said with some pride, you're late. I'm now taken. Originally, after Zheng Yujie returned to Beijing, she wanted to cut off any possible patent disputes in the future. So she went to Kai Simin and bought his comet system and computer patent. Later, Zheng Yujie thought about it again. It was also important to maintain the quality of the follow-up service. Otherwise, if there were any problems with the computers on Poplar Fruit Mountain, they wouldn't be able to find someone to fix it. Zheng Yujie simply asked her aunt for a shell company specializing in electronic products and signed Kai Simin under it. What kind of treatment did she give you? Fat Dragon asked with interest. It wasn't that he wanted to poach, it was purely out of curiosity. Facing Queen Zheng, who only smiled in front of Poplar Fruit, if Fat Dragon dared to pick up a hoe, he would really be looking for death. Including food and accommodation, 10,000 yuan a month, double salary at the end of the year, and performance. Kai Simin put down the screwdriver in his hand and patted his chest with a smile. The most important thing is that I have Beijing's household registration. People who have never drifted in Beijing would find it hard to understand the importance of Beijing's household registration in the eyes of Beijing drifters. With Beijing's household registration, it was equivalent to half a real estate certificate. Kai Simin, a high school dropout who was living in a dark basement in Zhongguancun, turned around and became someone with a house, a car, and a household registration. Although the house was a company-provided dorm, and the car was a small van that was parked in the underground parking lot most of the time, at least it gave Kai Simin the hope of becoming the owner. What position do you have? Does your company still want to hire? With such good treatment, I'll go too. Fat Dragon laughed and said. He was just teasing Kai Simin. He didn't think that 10,000 yuan a month was that high in Beijing. I'm the technical director. And if you want to come, I'll give you the position of deputy director. Of course, the probation period is 3 months. In these 3 months, you have to start from the bottom. Kai Simin crossed his legs and sat like a boss, leaning back on the rocking chair and said, come on, technical director. Fat Dragon curled his lips and exposed him without holding back. In the whole company, other than the boss, you're the only one, right? Kai Simin opened his eyes wide and wanted to refute, but he was immediately discouraged. He was indeed a lone commander now, and Zheng Yujie hadn't told him any development plans. It was still far from being able to recruit soldiers. Right now, it's just me, but it will definitely get better in the future. Kai Simin straightened his neck and said dryly. Kai Simin didn't know that when Zheng Yujie assigned him, it wasn't to train him to be Steve Jobs. Zheng Yujie just wanted him to assist Poplar Fruit and do a good job. It was purely an act to please her lover. However, this wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Kai Simin didn't think that what he was doing now would be so great. Chapter 626. After Xiongkehu woke up, he walked around the ancestral hall, feeling uneasy. On the way, he saw the board He Wenjue leading the soldiers from the special forces training in the village's martial arts field, attracting the attention of a group of hot-blooded Miao children. Xiongkehu had heard that Poplar Fruit and the others had a few exhibition matches in the open space in the village's center early in the morning. Of course, he wasn't unhappy because of their noise. On the contrary, Xiongkehu gave them a thumbs up in his heart. In the current society, literature was flourishing while martial arts were declining. However, in Xiongkehu's heart, although knowledge was important, one still needed a strong fist to conquer the world and protect their homeland. Nowadays, the children in the village were not very willing to practice martial arts. Their parents would also whisper in private, saying that they couldn't find a job if they learned martial arts. Only by studying would they have a way out. This left Xiongkehu with no choice but to sit quietly in the ancestral hall and drink. There weren't many who were willing to learn martial arts, and Xiong Jisher was the tallest among the short ones. There was no successor, but there was nothing he could do. After all, this was the trend of the times. Thinking of this, Xiongkehu suddenly thought of Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit's talent in martial arts was the highest he had ever seen. In the past, he would be a genius that was hard to come by in 100 years. In the beginning, Xiongkehu didn't want to impart all his martial arts to Poplar Fruit because of his sectarian bias, even though he was Xiong Village's benefactor. However, Poplar Fruit's talent reignited his hope in martial arts. Poplar Fruit learned quickly, so Xiongkehu taught him everything without hesitation. He wanted to see where Poplar Fruit's limit was. In less than half a month, Poplar Fruit had already learned how to use a two-handed miaodao. It could be said that other than experience, which Xiongkehu couldn't teach, all his martial arts knowledge had been taken away by Poplar Fruit. Of course, Poplar Fruit's ability to learn so quickly was also related to his own martial arts foundation. However, Xiongkehu could really see Poplar Fruit's passion and dedication towards martial arts. To be able to wake up at 5 o'clock every morning to practice martial arts, such a person would be hard to find in modern society, right? There was no need to say that perseverance would lead to victory, but paranoia was definitely extraordinary. Thinking about Kobe Bryant of the NBA, although his reputation was not good, his 5 championships were not for nothing. He even woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning to practice basketball before Poplar Fruit. Only with a fanatical love and obsession with basketball could he achieve his glory. Xiongkehu didn't know who Kobe was, but Xiongkehu believed that Poplar Fruit would reach a peak in martial arts that even he couldn't reach. Poplar Fruit, who was being nagged by his master, was not on the mountain at this time. He was following behind his daughter, and the two slowly walked down the mountain. Be careful, raise your feet. The road ahead is slippery. Come hold Daddy's hand. 1, 2, 3, jump. Poplar Fruit was like a pair of white wings behind Kiki's back, gentle and warm, always protecting Kiki, not leaving even half a step. As Chi-Chi walked down the mountain path, it was as if Alice had barged into a fairyland. Every step was an endlessly interesting adventure. Like a princess, she gently placed a hand on her father's palm and jumped up and down. Her bell-like laughter resounded throughout the mountain forest, and combined with the cicadas' cries in the scorching summer to form a gentle melody. Are you tired? Do you want Daddy to carry you? Poplar Fruit saw fine beads of sweat on the tip of his daughter's tender nose. He took out a small towel to wipe her and then asked. Kiki shook her head, slightly panting, and then firmly pointed down the mountain and said, No, Kiki wants to walk down the mountain by herself. Kiki's physical strength was very good, better than most children under the age of 5. Poplar Fruit already knew this, and he guessed that it might be related to the internal strength that he had left in Kiki's body. Not long ago, Poplar Fruit checked Kiki's body, and now the internal strength in Kiki's body was automatically circulating. Although it was a little slow, there was still a lot of progress. Therefore, Poplar Fruit wasn't too worried, and continued to walk down the mountain with his daughter. The reason why Poplar Fruit wanted to go down the mountain was because Meng Ping, the bureau chief, was coming. Calling him bureau chief wasn't a joke. Meng Ping really became the bureau chief. 2 days ago, the storm in Lidong County's officialdom affected too many people. From top to bottom, almost everyone was fired. Even the first and second in command of Lidong County, who didn't seem to be involved in Liang Xingtao's accounts, were fired. Although they didn't take off their official titles, they were transferred to a leisurely department like the Municipal Bureau of Agriculture, and their fates weren't any better. The Education Bureau was also hit hard. Other than Meng Ping, all the bureau chiefs and deputy bureau chiefs were investigated, and thus, the Education Bureau was in a difficult situation. The storm in Lidong County started from the internet, so even though it was a small place, it still attracted a lot of attention. Meng Ping's backer naturally noticed it, and he was still hesitating whether or not to save Meng Ping. In the end, he saw that Teacher Meng's child was unharmed. Not only was he unharmed, but after the bureau chief and deputy bureau chief were all investigated, Meng Ping became the only one who stood out. Meng Ping's backer saw this situation and was happy. This child was really giving his uncle face. Since this was the case, he might as well help Meng Ping again. At this moment, it was much easier for him to help Meng Ping. All he needed to do was say a word, and his subordinates would approve it. After all, Lidong County lacked grassroots officials at this time. If not for Meng Ping's lack of qualifications, he might even have been a deputy county head. Now no one was willing to go to a place like the Education Bureau. Since Meng Ping wanted to be a bureau chief, he would be given the position. Hence, Meng Ping was made a bureau chief. Of course, it was only a temporary position, but anyone could tell that once the new county head was confirmed, it was only a matter of time before he was promoted. At the beginning, there was a flurry of discussion in the bureau. Teacher Meng actually jumped 3 ranks in 2 years. There must be an inside story. But so what if there was an inside story? Meng Ping was someone that everyone trusted. He was diligent in his work, and was a clean official. Although he had a weird temper, he was much more amiable than the arrogant and despotic parasites. However, Meng Ping wasn't an amiable person. On the first day he became a temporary bureau chief, he announced that the Audit Bureau would conduct an audit of the Education Bureau's accounts. He was determined to catch all the staff that had embezzled the funds for aiding the poor. Just as everyone was waiting for the audit in fear, Meng Ping drove to the Xiong family village. He still remembered the matter that Poplar Fruit had asked him to do. Now it was his turn to make the decision. Meng Ping decided to first do an on-site investigation. Even if they were comrades in the same trench, Meng Ping wouldn't easily let Poplar Fruit use the funds for aiding the poor. Meng Ping still remembered the call that uncle gave him the night before. Meng Ping, you have to remember. No matter what you do, don't let your father's reputation be tarnished. Chapter 627. When they arrived at the foot of the mountain, Meng Ping was already waiting for them at the store. Xiong Jijiu recognized him. He was the son of Teacher Meng. Although he had only been here once before, and it was when they took Teacher Meng's body down the mountain, everyone remembered how he lost control of his emotions and shouted. After greeting them, the car was left at the store, and Poplar Fruit took Meng Ping up the mountain. Meng Ping had the personality of a scholar, and he walked up the mountain empty-handed. He actually stopped to rest 3 times while panting. Kiki curiously asked her father secretly, "Papa, why is uncle so tired?" Kiki is not tired even when she goes down the mountain. When they went up the mountain, Poplar Fruit held Kiki in his arms and did not let her climb up. Poplar Fruit originally wanted to hurry, but he found that Meng Ping was the one who slowed everyone down. Kiki's voice was very soft, and she was almost whispering in her father's ear. However, Poplar Fruit happened to be standing in the wind, and when the breeze blew, Meng Ping heard her voice. He would not lose his temper with the child. Meng Ping smiled, shook his head and said, I'm old, there's nothing I can do. Poplar Fruit rolled his eyes and complained in his heart. You obviously don't exercise, and you're saying that you're old when you're less than 50 years old. What an excuse. In any case, Meng Ping arrived at Xiong village at noon. He was not picky when eating. Although he had lived a rich life for a long time, he did not forget his original intention. This is the school. Now I plan to renovate it and install a safer circuit and improve anti-theft measures. Xiong Kahu was not interested in taking Meng Ping around, so Poplar Fruit led Meng Ping to the front of the school and pointed at the busy construction site. Meng Ping had been here once before, and at that time, he hated this place where his father could not get up. However, looking back now, he felt more and more sad. After all, this was the school of Miao Village that his father had worked hard for decades. That was the place that he dreamed of even when he was lying in a hospital bed, even after he retired. But now things were still the same, but the people had changed. No, that's not right. A few walls of that old-fashioned school had been torn down, and they were preparing to rebuild it. Perhaps the next time he came here, it would look completely different. Meng Ping said somewhat sourly. Don't delay the children's studies by causing so much trouble. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, No, the project is expected to be completed in about 10 days. Take me to see that long-distance education you mentioned. Meng Ping was afraid that he would think of someone when he saw it, so he waved his hand and said, although the equipment was tested in the Xiong family before, Yang Guo went to the ancestral hall first. Because Fat Dragon and the others were still there, he had to find someone to help him adjust the equipment. Yang Guo had no choice but to go to the ancestral hall first. Since Fat Dragon and the others were there, he had to find someone to help adjust the equipment. Raise it higher. Yes, it's about this height. As soon as he walked in, Poplar Fruit heard Kai Simin shouting. When he walked in, he saw that Kai Simin was instructing a few agile Miao women to help hang up the projector. What are you doing? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. Why are you installing the projector now? Aren't you going to install it after the school is built? Besides, you've messed up the ancestral hall. Don't break the plaque, or my master will come after you with a knife. Fat Dragon was holding the ladder at the side. He turned his head and smiled. We can't wait for the school. Let's try it here first. Isn't it good at home? Why do you have to choose the ancestral hall? Poplar Fruit asked. Isn't the place big? Fat Dragon smiled and said. I took a look. It can fit at least 50 to 60 computers, and it can all be adjusted in less than 2 days. We don't have to wait for the school to be built. Uncle Xiong also agreed. Kai Simin added. Uncle Xiong was referring to Xiong Kahu. Since his master didn't have any objections, Poplar Fruit didn't say anything else. Because they needed to connect all kinds of wires, Poplar Fruit was worried that Kiki would run around and cause problems, so he carried Kiki out and asked Xiong Xiaolin to take her back for a nap. I remember you told me that you don't have a teacher for this distance education? Meng Ping asked with a frown. It was too messy inside, so he and Poplar Fruit stood outside the ancestral hall to talk. They also acted as the door guards to stop the naughty boys from peeping. Of course there must be a teacher. How can we do it without a teacher? Poplar Fruit laughed and said, however, it's still different from traditional education. Our teacher won't stand here, but through cameras and the internet, teaching children in big cities hundreds of kilometers away. The advantage is that we can attract more people to participate. I plan to make it a charity event. Poplar Fruit opened his mouth and was ready to talk about his ideas. However, Meng Ping didn't give him any face and directly interrupted. I remember that you're a professor? Or a university student? Poplar Fruit honestly said. I'm not a professor. I'm currently a teaching assistant in the school. I'm studying for a master's degree. That's why I said that your idea is wrong. Meng Ping shook his head and said without any trace of politeness, how can you apply the education concept of a university to an elementary school student? University is a free-range education. Those students already have a certain level of self-control. You don't have to care too much about them. They can learn on their own. However, elementary school students are like sheep. They don't know anything. If you let them loose without a leader watching over them, will they be willing to learn on their own? Meng Ping said. The leader I'm talking about is a teacher. Meng Ping became more and more enthusiastic as he spoke. He summarized his previous teaching experience, giving examples and reasoning in an attempt to convince Poplar Fruit. Look, if you don't keep an eye on a middle school student, he will dare to climb over the wall to go online in the middle of the night. The self-control of an elementary school student is even weaker. If you put a computer in front of him, do you think that he will still listen to your lesson? Meng Ping's tone had a hint of disappointment. Don't think that you university students can tell a few good stories, play some good movies, and play some fancy slides. That's called a lesson. That's not called a lesson. That's called misleading the students, do you know that? When Meng Ping was agitated, he never cared if he was speaking too directly and could easily hurt others. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit's temper was good. Poplar Fruit waited for him to catch his breath before he had the chance to interrupt. He smiled and said, Uncle Meng, don't get agitated. The distance education that I want to do isn't as simple as playing movies. Education must be based on imparting knowledge. As for the problems that you mentioned, I have also considered them. I think that we have to look at it from 2 points. Poplar Fruit stretched out 2 fingers. One is the motivation to learn, and the other is the management of the students. As long as these 2 points are done well, I believe that even if it's a distance education, it won't be inferior to a face-to-face teacher teaching. Chapter 628. Poplar Fruit had mentioned the motivation to learn before, so as soon as Poplar Fruit finished speaking, Meng Ping raised his voice and retorted, I know what you mean by motivation to learn. I've said it before. It's just a foreign monk who knows how to ring the bell, Meng Ping said with some dissatisfaction. But if you think that the university students in the city can afford the education of so many children, I can tell you directly that you are too naive. That's right. In the beginning, the university students in the city are more knowledgeable, and their lectures are more interesting. But you have never been in the field of primary education, so you don't understand. Meng Ping shook his head and said earnestly, Novelty is only temporary for these children who don't know anything. You can maintain it for a day, 2 days, or even a month, but after a month, they will still be bored. Children like to move around, especially the children in the mountains who rarely sit down quietly to do something. Without a teacher urging them, forcing them, and reminding them, do you think they will obediently sit still and listen to the lesson? That's impossible, Meng Ping said. Poplar Fruit didn't interrupt his long-winded speech, but from the corner of his eye, he saw Xiong Kahu with his hands behind his back, silently sneaking behind Meng Ping and listening attentively. Meng Ping spoke for a long time, and finally concluded with one sentence, which was that Poplar Fruit's long-distance education was nonsense. Without waiting for Poplar Fruit to reply, Xiong Kahu rolled his eyes and said loudly, Little Meng, it's easy for you to say that. If you have the ability, find a teacher for this old man to teach these children. Meng Ping turned around and hurriedly greeted Xiong Kahu. He dared to shout at anyone, but he still had a little respect for Xiong Kahu. Xiong Kahu was of the same generation as his father, and used to be a guest in their house. Meng Ping gritted his teeth and said, Find one, I will definitely find one for you. Now that I am the director of the Lidong Education Bureau, I will be responsible for the children of Xiong Village. In a few months, I will definitely find a teacher to teach them. Come on, you. Xiong Kahu chuckled and said without giving him any face. At that time, Teacher Meng went to the city's education bureau many times, but there was nothing he could do. You're just a small bureau chief, so how can you be so arrogant? I will find it. Lidong County's situation is a little bad now, but I believe it won't continue to be this bad. Meng Ping was still an idealist. He was unconvinced. Then tell me, how many months do you want me to wait? Give me a definite time. Xiong Kahu raised his eyelids and looked at Meng Ping's speechless expression. Then he sneered and said, Forget it. Don't make me wait for another 2 years and delay the children before you say that you can't do it. Seeing Meng Ping's face turn red, Poplar Fruit patted his shoulder to make him relax. Then he smiled and said, Big brother Meng, We don't have a better method right now, right? So whether it's traditional education or online education, as long as the children can read books and solve their urgent needs, it's a good idea, don't you think so? Poplar Fruit's words are reasonable. Xiongkahu clapped his hands and said, I don't know what the long-distance education is about, but I can see that Poplar Fruit is investing so much in finding a way out for the children. And I can also see that the children love the lessons he teaches. That's enough. Don't lie to me, I don't believe it. Master, don't lose your temper. Don't say too much. Poplar Fruit felt that he was adding fuel to the fire, so he quickly stopped him. Then Poplar Fruit turned to Meng Ping and said with a smile, Uncle Meng, let's not talk about the effect first. Why don't you put aside your prejudice and listen to my ideas and see the actual effect on my side? What do you think? Meng Ping didn't continue to be stubborn. He went down the stairs and nodded. Then tell me. The learning motivation I'm talking about is actually a little different from what I introduced to you in the county city. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, the motivation is divided into driving force and internal driving force. The external driving force is that we will constantly summarize our experience and use some interesting teaching materials, as well as the advantages of the internet and multimedia to let the children find joy in learning, and let them like listening to lessons. I don't believe that there are children who like listening to lessons. Meng Ping snorted at Poplar Fruit's words. These children, if you don't care about them, they will be absent-minded in class or run out to play. Can you control them? Reach out your hand from the computer and press them down on the stool? What do you know? Why wouldn't they like it? The children listened to Poplar Fruit's stories without blinking. Xiongkahu jumped out as if his butt was on fire. He pointed at Meng Ping and scolded. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, Uncle Meng, you see, you are being paranoid again. Listen to me first. I will talk about your problem later on. Poplar Fruit said, then let's talk about internal driving force. Internal driving force refers to the fact that people have a lot of needs. In order to satisfy these needs, they will work hard to do things that they might not like. First of all, we will consciously let them understand that learning is the best way for them to walk out of the mountains and live a good life. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, this is not brainwashing, it is just like that. The specific method is not to tell them this, but to let them see the outside world. There are many promotional videos or documentaries on the internet that are actually quite good. I believe that when they understand how big the outside world is, they will want to study hard and strive to walk out of the mountains one day and explore the world. Meng Ping admitted that Poplar Fruit's words made sense. In fact, he knew the thoughts of the teachers in the county city, including himself. They all believed that the most important task of a teacher in class was to teach well, and let the students do well. For this goal, they would rather use the cramming method of education, or engage parents to teach instead of spending more time to understand the psychological needs of the children. Wasn't there such a joke? One had to study hard in primary school. Why? Because during the quiz, one had to get into a good junior high school. One had to study hard in junior high school. Why? Because during the middle school exams, one had to get into a good senior high school. One had to study hard in senior high school. Why? Because during the college entrance exams, one had to get into a good university. One had to study hard in university. Why? Because if one studied hard, one would be able to find a good job when they walked out of society. However, after finding a good job, one would be scolded by the boss every day. You pig brain, did you study hard all day in school until you became stupid? Is it my fault? Chapter 629. There's also the internal drive. Poplar Fruit smiled. I think that there's a need to set up a reward system. Reward system? Meng Ping jumped up and said in disgust. Do you want education to be as utilitarian as society? Poplar Fruit was stunned. He felt that this question was a little difficult to answer. Although there was indeed some competition, it seemed that calling it utilitarian was a little too much. I look down on those schools the most. They would give out tens of thousands of yuan as a reward to the top scorer of the college entrance examination. Meng Ping said in disdain. There's nothing wrong with the reward, but to compete with each other and even use the reward to attract students, They might as well turn the school into a vanity fair. Poplar Fruit smiled. Uncle Meng, look, you're getting excited again. I didn't say that I wanted to set up a cash reward. Of course, money is indeed a good incentive for the children of Meng Village who have a hard time living now. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, but I think that rather than giving them cash rewards to spend, it's better to give them a chance to expand their horizons. It's better to teach a man how to fish than to give him a fish. The logic is the same. Poplar Fruit smiled. I plan to do it this way. Every day, the performance of the children in class and the completion of their homework will be tabulated. At the end of the term, they will be graded. It's a little like university, where the average, midterm, and final exam scores will be divided into percentages and the total score will be calculated into a ranking. Why is it so troublesome? Don't the exam scores speak for themselves? Whether or not they are serious in class, whether or not they are diligent in their homework, these can all be seen. Meng Ping couldn't help but interrupt Poplar Fruit's words. Poplar Fruit could only explain to him, it's different. Some children are talented and intelligent. They don't need to pay attention in class to get high marks. If it's completely based on the midterm and final exam scores, it's very unfair to the students who are usually serious. What's unfair about it? You usually perform well, but in the end, you still can't do well in the exam. What's the use? Meng Ping was puzzled by Poplar Fruit's idea. Look, Uncle Meng, you just said that you were against utilitarian education. Now you're talking about results again. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, plus the usual performance points, it's because the learning process and the results are equally important. Also, I don't want the children to think that their future is hopeless if their grades are not good. Besides, we will adjust the content of the class according to the situation. In particular, we will add courses such as interest classes for them, so that they can rely on their own interests to learn some knowledge that interests them in addition to the textbook knowledge. Poplar Fruit said, for example, for those who like literature, we will have elective courses like lecture room and literature appreciation. For those who like martial arts, we will also set up some similar courses. New education? Meng Ping's interest was piqued, but he frowned and said, isn't this making a mountain out of a molehill? Indeed, setting up so many different classes for 300 children always gave people the feeling of using a cannon to kill mosquitoes. This is just a hypothesis. Poplar Fruit smiled. He was a little distracted by Meng Ping and said, back to the topic just now, we will use the final results of the semester to rank them. Then we will choose the top 10 of each grade, and provide them with a chance to go out of the mountains and see the outside world. This is what I have always wanted to do. Our volunteer teachers don't just end the class after it ends. Usually, they will often communicate with the children to understand their psychological state. Then, during the winter and summer holidays, we will bring these volunteers to the mountains and communicate with the children face to face. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, at this time, the money saved from the usual long-distance education will come in handy. Then we will let them bring 60 children out and bring them to the city, the provincial capital in the mountains, or the more prosperous Yangcheng. These are all possible. Usually, the teachers will bring the students out to play, and they will also organize some interesting activities and games. During this period, they will personally experience the life in the city and the world that they could only understand through their imagination. Poplar Fruit said, then the next step is more important. When these children go back, they will introduce what they have seen and heard to the other children. I believe that in this process, other children will be envious and work harder to learn, fighting for the next chance to go out of the mountains. A single spark is enough to start a prairie fire. Poplar Fruit said confidently. What's more, what we give them is not a single spark, but a burning torch. While Meng Ping was still pondering and digesting the content of Poplar Fruit's words, Poplar Fruit continued. He stretched out 2 fingers and said, then it's the management of the students. Uncle Meng, what you said actually makes sense. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Without a teacher by their side, I can't guarantee that the children will sit obediently on the chairs and listen to the lesson even if there is an external force and an internal force. So, in order to solve this problem, we will also set up a head teacher. Poplar Fruit said, this head teacher doesn't need to be responsible for the teaching content. His responsibility is to manage our machines, and then care about and supervise the children's learning. 1. Or 1 for each class. Meng Ping didn't hear clearly. 1. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. 300 children are under his care. He doesn't need to disturb the teachers in the classroom, but he will patrol the 6 grades during the lesson and supervise the particularly disobedient children to sit obediently in their seats and listen to the lesson. Isn't that too little? 300 people. Meng Ping didn't believe that one person could take care of all of them. Yes, Poplar Fruit said. We will also have a class monitor to help manage the class order. Also, the children that are difficult to teach are the minority. Most of the children will listen carefully in class. Then what about your homework? Meng Ping asked with confusion. You can't send it all back for the teacher to change, right? I think our homework model might be different from the current school. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, it will mainly be online homework that will be done on the computer. But this is only an idea. The software hasn't been designed yet, so I can't demonstrate it to you. Doing homework on the computer wasn't an easy goal to achieve, because for mathematics, multiple choice and fill-in-the-blank questions could be answered with a mouse and keyboard, but what if there was a short answer question? You can't use a mouse to draw or write, right? Without other software to use, Fat Dragon had to do his own research and design software that matched Poplar Fruit's ideas. Fat Dragon was an expert, but he wasn't Doraemon. He wasn't someone that Poplar Fruit could casually take out from his pocket. Even so, Poplar Fruit still patiently explained to Meng Ping to reluctantly accept his idea of remote education. Chapter 630. Why did he spend so much effort to convince Meng Ping? Why did he accompany Meng Ping to inspect the stockade at this busiest time? Poplar Fruit, of course, had something to ask of him. Poplar Fruit brought Meng Ping to the main circuit control office in the stockade and said, Look, Uncle Meng, if we want to carry out this plan, it's not enough for me to donate money and computers alone. I told you before that the voltage in the stockade is low and unstable, Poplar Fruit said. It's mainly because we don't have enough wires outside, so we need at least 2 more high-voltage wires. It used to be enough because everyone didn't use much electricity. Usually we just turned on the lights and didn't even have a refrigerator, Poplar Fruit said. But now it's not enough. Once we turn on more than 300 computers, the electricity consumption will increase exponentially. I'm afraid it won't be able to handle the load. Meng Ping nodded slightly but didn't say anything. There's also the problem of the internet, Poplar Fruit said. You're one of us, so I won't hide it from you. To be honest, we can only access the internet in the village now because my friend used a satellite dish to convert it into a signal amplifier. He captured the network signal from the signal tower on the national highway at the foot of the mountain. Although I also used my own account to log in, it's still somewhat illegal. Uncle Meng, look, there aren't so many corrupt officials in the county now. Can you help me find some connections and ask the Power Supply Bureau and the Telecommunications Bureau to help build these infrastructure as soon as possible? Poplar Fruit said. As for the electricity, there's already a high-voltage wire tower. It's easy to add 2 more wires. Meng Ping patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said, Poplar Fruit, you're the most sincere person I've ever met. Although I'm still not very optimistic about your long-distance education. Don't worry. I promise you that I'll definitely help you implement it. Meng Ping was also a man of his word. If he promised something, he would definitely do his best to help you. Hey, Poplar Fruit is here. Someone walked over. His huge body completely blocked out the sunlight, and all of a sudden, it felt like the sky had turned dark. Hearing this simple and honest voice, Poplar Fruit knew that it was Xiong San. However, Meng Ping was startled by Xiong San. When he turned around, he saw a huge man standing behind him. Meng Ping, who had never seen such a tall man in Lidong, was so scared that he almost fell to the ground. Poplar Fruit hurriedly supported him and said to Xiong San with some blame, Big brother Xiong San, why did you suddenly appear? There's no sound. Xiong San scratched his head and said, I wanted to arm wrestle with you, but I didn't see you the whole morning. You are also from the Xiong clan? Meng Ping took a deep breath and asked curiously. Even if it was in the mountains, Meng Ping did not think that anyone could grow to more than 2 meters tall. After all, the genes were there. No, Uncle Meng, you misunderstood. This is my friend from Yangcheng, a soldier. It just so happened that he was on holiday, so he came over to take a look. Poplar Fruit smiled and introduced. Big brother Xiong-san, this is Meng Ping, Uncle Meng. This is the director of Lidong County's Education Bureau. Hello. Xiong-san was very nice and took the initiative to extend his hand. Hello. Meng Ping looked at Xiong-san's fan-sized palm and felt a little weak. He hesitated for a moment before he shakily placed his little hand in Xiong-san's palm. Xiong-san shook his hand twice. Withdrawing his hand, Meng Ping let out a sigh of relief. Just a moment ago, he was worried that his hand would be crushed by this huge man. However, Xiong-san controlled his strength very well. It was neither too big nor too small. It was just enough to let Meng Ping feel his passion without hurting him. Xiong-san, if you want to arm wrestle, I don't have time right now. Poplar Fruit looked at Meng Ping beside him and said to Xiong-san with some embarrassment. I know, I have to accompany a guest. Xiong-san laughed, causing Meng Ping's eardrums to swell. It's okay, we'll talk about it when I have time. I don't have anything to accompany, I've already seen and asked all the questions. Meng Ping suddenly said. Poplar Fruit, you go play, no need to entertain me. Oh right, aren't you going to arm wrestle? I also want to take a look. Meng Ping was smiling faintly, but his eyes were dancing with a smile. That's right, Meng Ping was black-bellied. When he heard arm wrestle, he looked at Xiong-san's terrifying muscles and palms, and then looked at Poplar Fruit's well-proportioned physique. He didn't think that Poplar Fruit could arm wrestle with Xiong-san. Okay. Xiong-san grinned and said, then let's go. Xiong-san walked up and squeezed in between Meng Ping and Poplar Fruit. His two thick arms hugged Meng Ping and Poplar Fruit as they walked forward. When they arrived at the training field, before they even entered, a person came out from the ancestral hall. It was Kai Simin. He ran over to Poplar Fruit and said, Boss, there's something I want to tell you. Zheng Yujia asked him to call Poplar Fruit boss, and Kai Simin really did it. Regardless of whether Poplar Fruit liked the title or not. Poplar Fruit said helplessly, How many times have I told you not to call me boss? I don't pay you. What's the matter? Our table is unreasonable. Kai Simin gestured and said, It's so big, after putting in the screen, it can't fit anything else. Poplar Fruit knew that at that time. Fat Dragon used 2 tables to put together. It has to be widened. Kai Simin gestured and said, It has to be at least twice as big. That way, it will be more comfortable to type on the keyboard, and it will also protect the eyes. My suggestion is to have it custom-made. Kai Simin spoke quickly. Isn't our keyboard very thick? Then make a concave hole so that it can fit in, so that the children can have a good posture when typing. Also, the place where the screen is placed has to be screwed to reinforce the screen. Otherwise, if you touch the table, the screen will fall down and break. How can that work? Poplar Fruit smiled and said, Yes, your suggestion is good. You discuss with Fat Dragon and make a simple design. Then, I'll show it to Uncle He tonight. When they arrived at the training field, Xiong-san and Poplar Fruit found a stone plate and sat down facing each other. Seeing that there was a good show to watch, many of the children from Xiong village gathered around noisily. I want to wash away my shame, Xiong-san said honestly. Come. Poplar Fruit smiled. Rolling up his sleeves, one black and one white arm contrasted sharply on the stone plate. What was even more striking was the disproportionate thickness of the muscles. There was no referee. After the two of them signaled each other with their eyes, they began arm wrestling. It's getting bigger. A child who wasn't even 10 years old exclaimed as he pointed at Poplar Fruit's arm. It was a change that could be seen with the naked eye. When Poplar Fruit used all his strength, his arm actually swelled up, causing his sleeves to tighten. Hey. Xiong-san exerted all his strength. His strength was enough to lift an adult bull, but in front of Poplar Fruit, he was still lacking by a little. Poplar Fruit was also exerting all his strength, but he didn't need to shout or hold it in until his face turned red. Under this shocking contrast, Poplar Fruit slowly twisted Xiong-san's wrist onto the stone plate. Meng Ping couldn't believe his eyes. He had a surprised look on his face. He didn't look as calm as when he wanted to see Poplar Fruit make a fool of himself. A thought flashed through his mind. Could it be that this big guy is a soft-footed shrimp? Those muscles are a lie, right? Chapter 631. Huanjua, Meng Sanhua, and the other soldiers from the Special Forces gave up their comfortable vacation and came all the way to Gui Mountain. They were not just here to see Poplar Fruit and listen to Xiongkahu talk about the past. Back then, Xiongkahu's illustrious battle achievements could be said to be a legend in the history of our military. Huanjua and the others really wanted to see for themselves just what kind of skills the legendary Old Master Xiongkahu had. In the end, on the night they came, all of them were drunk. When they woke up the next day, they saw Old Master Xiongkahu's white-haired appearance and how he walked with a trembling gait. They were a little embarrassed to voice their request. Yin Luqing asked the other people in the Hmong village. It was said that among Xiongkahu's disciples, the most powerful one was called Xiong Along the way, Yin Luqing found that Xiong was the young man who had practiced swordsmanship with Poplar Fruit in the morning. Xiong swordsmanship was not bad among ordinary people, but in the eyes of these experienced soldiers, it was still not enough to be a master. Yin Luqing regretted that he did not find Xiong to practice with. He could only walk around the village to see if he could meet someone as powerful as the Shaolin Temple sweeping monk. The next day, Huanjua took them for a run around the village. They happened to see Xiongkahu and Poplar Fruit come back from practicing swordsmanship on the mountain. Yin Liuqing's eyes lit up. He saw Xiongkahu with a completely different aura after holding a sword. He walked over excitedly and asked to see Xiongkahu's swordsmanship. "I'm from Sungzhou." Yin Luqing saw Xiongkahu looking at him, so he bowed and said, "It's my family's swordsmanship." Xiongkahu looked at Yin Luqing and asked, "Your surname is Yin? Yin Zhentai's descendant?" "He's my great-grandfather. Have you seen him before?" Yin Luqing was shocked. He did not expect that an old man who lived in the mountains all year round would know so much about the outside world. Master Yin Zhentai was known as the #1 swordsman in North China. Unfortunately, he did not escape the bullets of the Japanese. Xiongkahu shook his head and said, "I've never seen him. When I was born, Master Yin was already dead. Master Yin's swordsmanship was passed down by the swordsmen who roamed the world. I've admired him for a long time." "You're his descendant? That's great." Xiongkahu laughed and said, "You can compete with Poplar Fruit. I want to see if Master Yin's swordsmanship is better or my Miaodao." "Yanggua." Yin Luqing hesitantly looked at Yanggua. Use swordsmanship. Xiongkahu's name was Xiong. However, if she were to fight with Yanggua, Yin Luqing felt that she had an unfair advantage, and she could not see the true level of Miaodao. Xiongkahu saw that Xiongkahu did not believe in Poplar Fruit and was amused. "What? You're looking down on Poplar Fruit? Poplar Fruit is 70% as good as me. You can practice with him first. If you're not satisfied, we can help each other." "Okay." Xiongkahu nodded. He didn't even run anymore, looking like he was eager to give it a try. Huanjua was not that unreasonable. Since they were not in the army, he disbanded the running team to satisfy these guys' desire to watch the show. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Wait. I'll go back and wake Kiki up." Looking at the time, Kiki was about to get up. Without anyone to look after her, Poplar Fruit was worried. Yin Luqing also had to go back to get his swordsmanship, so everyone agreed to meet at the training field in half an hour. Kiki was quite obedient when she woke up today. She squinted her eyes and smiled as she helped her father change her clothes. "Come, open your mouth. Daddy will brush your teeth for you." Poplar Fruit pinched his daughter's chubby cheeks and held a small cup for her to drink and spit out. Kiki opened her mouth and giggled. "Open your mouth. Now is not the time to say pinyin." Poplar Fruit patted Kiki's little butt and smiled. "Daddy is going to compete with Uncle Luqing in swordsmanship later. You won't be able to play if you're late." Kiki opened her mouth obediently. She bit on the small toothbrush her father gave her and said vaguely, Then, Kiki, can I go and play?" "Kiki can't play with swords, but you can go and watch." Poplar Fruit took out the toothbrush and smiled. Yes, Kiki wants to watch." Kiki was very happy. She jumped up and hugged her father, smearing the toothpaste foam all over her father's neck. After washing her face and combing her hair, Poplar Fruit tied his daughter's hair into a beautiful flower bun. The current Poplar Fruit was already very familiar with braids and hairstyles that were not very complicated. The flower bun was to tie the long hair that was hanging down into a bud-shaped bun on the top of the head. This way, the hair that was hanging down would only be the length of bangs and would not be draped loosely behind the back. This hairstyle was a little cute, but it was definitely not as good looking as a ponytail or braid. However, the advantage was that it was cooler in this hot summer. When Poplar Fruit was bathing Kiki yesterday, he saw that Kiki's back had a little heat rash. He discussed it with Fong Beibei and decided to change Kiki's hairstyle into a more comfortable one. "Oh, my head is so heavy." Kiki looked at herself in the mirror with her new hairstyle. She also felt that it was funny. She took her father's hand and walked around the bed exaggeratedly, acting very unhappy. "Okay, let's go, it's almost time." Poplar Fruit put on his daughter's small shoes, picked up his 2 Meow Dao with his right hand, and said with a smile, "I'll help Papa take it." Kiki was very active. After being helped down from the bed by her father with one hand, she jumped up and down and pulled the tail of the Meow Dao scabbard. She raised her little butt and wanted to lift it up. Poplar Fruit put away the Meow Dao, then pulled Kiki up and said with a smile, "Dad can take it himself." Poplar Fruit took the milk bottle that had just cooled down from the table next to him. He hung it around Kiki's neck with a small rope and said, "Kiki will be responsible for drinking milk." Kiki nodded obediently. She held the milk bottle and took a sip. Then she cupped her hands and blocked her father's big hand. She raised her little head, smacked her lips and said, "Kiki wants to go by herself." Poplar Fruit laughed, waved his hand and said with a smile, "Let's go." 2 figures, one big and one small, walked out of the room. There was a long figure that followed them to the corridor at the door. It whimpered, wagged its tail, hesitated for a moment, lowered its head, and turned back to the room with its tail between its legs. "Uncle, where are you going?" Just as he went downstairs, Xiong Xiaofeng came out of nowhere with a strand of spider web hanging on his head. He shouted, "Kiki, let's go play together. I want to see Papa's knife dance." Kiki shook her head and said, following her father closely, "It's dancing. Kiki, your Mandarin is not standard." Xiong Xiaofeng said with some pride, "It's knife dance. This is reading the knife." Kiki was anxious. She pointed to her father's scabbard and said seriously. Then she raised her head and asked her father to be the judge. "Kiki is right. It's indeed a knife. Dancing is another kind." Xiaofeng misunderstood. Poplar Fruit took off the spider web on Xiong Xiaofeng's head, patted him on the head, and said with a smile, "Then I want to see it too." Xiong Xiaofeng jumped up and followed behind. Chapter 632. With 2 followers, Poplar Fruit leisurely came to the martial arts field of the Hmong village. He Wanzhua and the others had already arrived. They were surrounded by the children of the Hmong village. Some of them could not squeeze forward, so they climbed up the high railing. There were very few entertainment activities for the children on the mountain. They were not satisfied with yesterday's excitement. Seeing these soldiers gathered at the martial arts field again, they spread the word of mouth. In just half an hour, almost all the boys had gathered there. Seeing them whispering to each other and waiting for the start of the show, Poplar Fruit felt that these boys were waiting for a movie to be released, and he and Yin Luqing would put on a big show for them. Not only these children, but also Xiong Jisher and 2 other young people who had not yet started to work in the school gathered together. They stood next to the weapon rack in the martial arts field. Poplar Fruit patted Kiki and asked her to follow Xiong Xiaofeng to Xiong Jisher's side. Poplar Fruit was worried that Kiki would run around and get hurt by the swords. It was safer with Xiong Jisher's help. However, without Poplar Fruit's order, Wanzhua saw so many restless boys around and waved his hand to let Xiong De, Xiong Er, and Xiong San stand in front of those boys to prevent them from accidentally running into the middle of the field. Xiong De and Xiong San were too strong, so they attracted most of the attention. A few fearless boys even ran to Xiong San to compare their height, but found that they were not even as tall as Xiong San's knees. Poplar Fruit walked to his master's side. Yin Luqing had already taken out his padao and was wiping the shiny blade with a rough towel. The padao looked a bit like a broadsword, but it was longer than a broadsword and looked more simple. It was one of the most common weapons carried by chivalrous heroes in Jianghu, which reflected the practicality of the padao to some extent. How do we compete? Do we decide the winner in one round? Poplar Fruit took out the key and asked while unlocking the scabbard. Let's decide it in one round. Yin Luqing said confidently. He didn't want to waste too much time on Poplar Fruit. Padaos have different lengths, Xiongkahu suddenly interrupted and said. Let's compete in 2 rounds so that we can see the results. Yin Luqing was stunned for a moment before nodding his head. He didn't mind, but he thought that Xiongkahu was worried that Poplar Fruit would make a fool of himself and wanted to increase his chances of winning. Poplar Fruit didn't mind either. To have the opportunity to see more of the kung fu of other sects was something to be happy about. Yin Luqing arrived early, so he stood in the middle of the field. His posture was very standard, completely the posture of a soldier. His back was straight, and from the back of his head to his heels, he formed a straight line. He held his saber in his left hand and held it behind his back, waiting for Poplar Fruit to come over. Poplar Fruit, you'll be the first one. Single blade. Xiongkahu waved his hand and instructed. Poplar Fruit was stunned for a moment, but he still followed the order and stuck the miaodao in his left hand into the ground. Then he cupped his fists and walked into the field. Before Poplar Fruit turned around, Yin Luqing looked at Poplar Fruit with a little sympathy. He thought to himself, maybe Poplar Fruit's dual saber skills haven't reached perfection yet? Old Xiong wouldn't let him make a fool of himself with dual sabers. Yin Luqing then thought of the previous practice between Poplar Fruit and Xiong Jisher, which was also single blade. He was even more certain of his guess. He secretly planned to go easy on Poplar Fruit. Meng Sanhua was bored standing on the side. All his attention was on Poplar Fruit and Yin Luqing. He didn't have the time to maintain order with He Wenjua and the others. After seeing Poplar Fruit throw down a miaodao, Meng Sanhua excitedly ran over to pick it up, wanting to weigh it in his hand. Meng Sanhua almost sprained his waist when he tried to pick it up. It wasn't that the miaodao was so heavy that he couldn't lift it. It was just that it was very different from what he had expected. He had thought that even if the miaodao was heavy, it would only be 2 or 3 kilograms. But Poplar Fruit's miaodao was as heavy as an AK-47. One had to know that an AK-47 could only be used with 2 hands in combat. If the miaodao was so heavy, how was one supposed to use it? Unlike a gun that could be fired immediately after being picked up, a miaodao should be designed with more emphasis on flexibility. Meng Sanhua already felt that the miaodao was a bit of a hindrance. If he were to fight someone else, he would probably be killed before he could even pull it out. Is there only one way to split a mountain? Meng Sanhua was puzzled. The competition had already begun. Yin Luqing and Poplar Fruit came into contact. In the beginning, both of their movements were slow. The tips of their blades clashed for a moment before moving away. They were testing each other, trying to figure out each other's strengths. After all, this wasn't a battlefield. There was no need to fight to the death right from the start. It was a good thing that they knew when to stop when they were ahead. Otherwise, if they used too much force and the opponent couldn't dodge, there would be blood. One had to know that both of them were using real sharpened blades. A heavy blade without a sharp edge meant that a heavy blade without a sharp edge could hurt someone. Even though it was just a short clash, Yin Luqing's expression changed. He felt a strong force coming from the blade. He didn't feel it clearly the first time, but the second time, Yin Luqing realized that it wasn't an illusion. Poplar Fruit's blade was indeed very strong. But why did he feel that Poplar Fruit's agility with the blade was no less than his? What was going on? There was no time to figure out the answer to this question. After the two of them tested each other, they entered an increasingly fierce fight. In terms of technique, the padao wasn't inferior to the 24 miaodao forms. It was born out of the famous cha quan. Like cha quan, it focused on nimble steps, strong rhythm, relaxed posture, and rapid force. The padao only had a few moves: chop, stomp, sweep, block, and twist. But it was better in its agility and infinite changes, making it impossible to guard against. Yin Luqing chopped, swept, and flicked his blade. His body moved left and right. He quickly struck 3 times from the top, middle, and bottom. Although he avoided the vital parts and held back some of his strength, the blade's shadow was like a strange spirit snake. It appeared in front of him before he could notice it. Clang, clang, clang. Poplar Fruit reacted quickly. He held the blade in one hand, and the back of the blade in the other. He quickly blocked 3 times and dodged Yin Liuqing's series of attacks. At this time, the children watching the fight were just starting to exclaim. His reaction was very fast. Yin Liuqing's mind flashed through several scenes of Poplar Fruit winning against Meng Sanhua. It seemed that he won by relying on his faster reaction than Meng Sanhua. Unfortunately, it wasn't just a competition of reaction speed. No matter how fast your reaction speed is, it's not as fast as my speed. Yin Liuqing swung his blade, and was blocked by Poplar Fruit. Then he jumped up like a monkey and flashed to Poplar Fruit's right side. He stretched his body and swung his blade again. Chapter 633. So fast. Poplar Fruit exclaimed in his heart. With a flip of his wrist, he carried the saber with one hand while his left hand reached out from his waist to hold the back of the saber. Another metallic clang was heard, and Yin Liuqing's saber was blocked by him again. The trajectory of Yin Liuqing's jump appeared in Poplar Fruit's mind. The speed he was praising was not how fast the saber was. Yin Liuqing's saber speed might not be comparable to Poplar Fruit's. It was just that his steps were very light and his movements were strange. He was faster than himself in terms of changes. Yin Liuqing did not use any strength in this saber. When she got close to Poplar Fruit, she quickly stopped, worried that Poplar Fruit did not have the ability to catch the saber. However, Poplar Fruit still gave her a big surprise. Poplar Fruit actually caught the saber, and it felt like he was handling it with ease. His reaction speed was really fast. Yin Liuqing knew that Poplar Fruit's talent was personal, and she could not be envious. After receiving 2 unexpected strikes from Yin Liuqing, Yanghua felt that he couldn't go on like this. His single blade technique was focused on speed and swiftness. Every strike had to be simple and precise. His movements were valiant and vigorous. One after another, he attacked continuously, chopping and chopping. With a small amount of variation, he was able to open a bloody path in the midst of thousands of soldiers and horses like a hot knife through butter. However, Poplar Fruit could not fight too fiercely when playing with his own people. Not only did he restrain his strength, but he also consciously exerted force to control his heavy miaodao. Otherwise, if he chopped with all his strength, if Yin Liuqing could not dodge in time, Poplar Fruit would probably not be able to hold back his saber. Then wouldn't Yin Liuqing be split in half by this sharp miaodao? But in this way, it would be like cutting off an arm. The advantage of Poplar Fruit's saber technique would be gone. Yin Liuqing's saber technique also gave Poplar Fruit a lot of inspiration. When he was competing with Yin Liuqing, his mind was also working crazily. He observed his opponent's steps and saber technique, while studying the strengths and weaknesses of both sides. That's right. Why do I have to learn the miaodao movement technique? Poplar Fruit's eyes lit up. Although it can ensure that the legs support the waist and make the waist twist more powerful, I don't need it. He had learned Tai Chi and 8-step meteor kick. Tai Chi's mellow and vigorous inner strength allowed him to have an endless supply of strength without having to take root in the ground. Moreover, Tai Chi's moves were not as sluggish as miaodao's. Instead, it emphasized on the lightness of the body and allowed him to climb and jump with ease. As for the 8 steps meteor kick, there was no need to mention it. This was a martial art that focused on body movement. If one kept dragging his feet on the ground, he wouldn't be able to kick out. That wouldn't be called meteor kick. Poplar Fruit was bold. Even when he was facing Yin Liuqing's swift blade, he still had the time to think about how to make a change. Yin Liuqing's padao was beautiful, but not only was it beautiful, but it was also effective and flexible, which was exactly what Poplar Fruit wanted to learn. Xiongkahu, who was sitting on the armchair, was the first to notice Yanggua's change. He was followed by Meng Sanhua beside him. Xiongkahu was too familiar with miaodao, so he could see through any change at a glance. As for Meng Sanhua, although his martial arts talent wasn't as good as Poplar Fruit's, he was still the type that was hard to come by in 10 years. Poplar Fruit went from being passive to being able to jump out of Yin Liuqing's rhythm, and then gradually having his own counterattack. He was very sensitive to this change. In fact, the one who felt it the most was Yin Liuqing. Poplar Fruit was just standing there like a pillar and passively defending. Although he was like a tortoise shell, it wasn't to the extent that he became as smooth as he was now. The 8 steps meteor kick merged into the Miao Dao was a little stiff. This was what Poplar Fruit felt at first. After jumping up and down, Poplar Fruit felt that other than sweeping and stabbing, he couldn't connect any other moves with the Miao Dao. Although he was able to jump out of Yin Liuqing's rhythm and didn't have to be tired of parrying, he still couldn't make a counterattack. Jump, jump, turn, spin, and jump again. Poplar Fruit frowned and continued to ponder. There was probably no one else in the world who could be like Yang Guo, who could think of new moves while fighting with other people at the same time. After all, Yin Liuqing wasn't a newbie who had just learned how to use a saber. His family's kung fu had been passed down in his family for more than 10 years. His kung fu was also one of the best in the special forces, and he had been honed in actual combat. In the past, he would have been a prominent swordsman. Kung fu was different, but the principles weren't too different. After all, they were all moves made by the human body. Poplar Fruit pondered and found the compatibility between the 8 steps meteor kick and the Miao Dao. The 8 steps meteor kick actually didn't need to be performed at full strength. After all, it was just a support, and the main theme was still the saber. It only needed to use 80%, no 40% of the speed. Then, when he walked, he couldn't just focus on agility. He had to keep his waist steady and rely on his waist to control the agility of his upper body. This way, the Miao Dao's using the waist to carry the saber, using the body to urge the saber to move could be executed. Poplar Fruit pondered and tried, and Yin Liuqing began to feel Poplar Fruit's counterattack. It's getting faster. Yin Liuqing was slightly surprised. He also increased the speed of his saber. Now that he realized that Poplar Fruit's strength wasn't bad, he didn't need to hold back so much anymore. However, Poplar Fruit's progress was far faster than his. Poplar Fruit nimbly dodged. When Yin Liuqing thought that Poplar Fruit would appear on the right, Poplar Fruit magically jumped to the left. Poplar Fruit sucked in his chest, straightened his back, sucked in his stomach and tucked in his butt. He quickly raised his saber with great strength. Yin Liuqing was shocked. He didn't have time to dodge. Fortunately, his saber was very nimble and he was able to block in front of his left body. Dang! With a dull sound, Yin Liuqing felt a strong force coming from the saber. He couldn't block it at all. The saber was blocked. Yin Liuqing couldn't stop and kept retreating. In order to stabilize his body, he waved his left hand. At this time he was wide open. Poplar Fruit wouldn't let go of any chance to defeat the enemy. He took another quick step forward and made a very simple downward slash. The Miao Dao drew a crescent moon in the air and slashed towards Yin Liuqing's chest with a fierce saber wind. Yin Liuqing subconsciously closed his eyes. However, Poplar Fruit's saber suddenly stopped in front of him. He flicked his wrist and flipped the back of the saber. He gently touched Yin Liuqing's chest, meaning to stop. Yin Liuqing opened his eyes and stood up straight. He sighed and hugged his saber to Poplar Fruit. He had lost this match. There was applause all around. The children of Xiong village weren't stingy with their applause and cheers. It was as if they had won the match. The layman watched the show while the expert watched the skill. There was no one more expert than Xiong Kahu. He didn't applaud. Instead, he looked at Poplar Fruit strangely and pondered over Poplar Fruit's movements. This brat actually changed this old man's martial arts. Chapter 634. Poplar Fruit was quite happy with his first victory. However, his happiness was mainly due to his innovation of the Miao Dao. In a sense, this was also his own breakthrough. Perhaps Poplar Fruit did not notice Xiong Kahu's absent-mindedness. He did not know that even if he combined two martial arts, it was still a feat that ordinary people could not achieve. Moreover, Xiong Kahu had personally witnessed Poplar Fruit's transformation under the pressure of the battle in just a few minutes. A grandmaster of a generation. Xiong Kahu's face revealed a smile. It was hard to tell whether it was relief or bitterness. This kid, Meng Sanhua, who was standing at the side, seemed to have vaguely heard something. He asked doubtfully. What? Old man, what did you say? Nothing. Xiongkahu smiled and did not say much. Yin Luqing shook his head. He was not too depressed because of his failure. The strength that poplar fruit had just shown was not stronger than his actual strength. It was normal for him to be caught off guard by poplar fruit's transformation. As a martial artist, he had to be able to take things and let them go with the flow. Poplar fruit and Yin Luqing still had the next match. Poplar fruit saw Yin Luqing walk to the guitar case that he had placed at the side. He unzipped it and lifted the top half of the cover. Poplar fruit suddenly realized that this guitar case was used to store his padao. Poplar fruit smiled. At first, he was very confused as to why Yin Luqing would come to the mountain with a guitar. Seeing poplar fruit's curious gaze, Yin Luqing smiled and explained, "If a padao is not decorated when going out, it will cause uneasiness in public." Yin Luqing took out a metal handle that was about the length of the blade. It looked a bit like the handle of a short mop. He gently removed the plastic cover at the bottom of the handle, revealing a dark hole. He buckled the metal handle inside and rotated it twice. A long blade that looked like a large glaive was born under poplar fruit's surprised gaze. The surrounding children were also discussing. Their attention immediately shifted from Kiki's father's martial arts to the large blade that could transform. Xiongkahu nodded with satisfaction. He said, "Descendant of the Yin family, today you will show me the glory of the #1 blade in North China." Yin Luqing quickly bowed and said, "Old man, I can't. I'm not as talented as my great-grandfather. How can I reproduce his glory?" "Hey child, why do you talk so much?" Xiongkahu was dissatisfied again. "If you're Yin Zhentai's descendant, then you should show some vigor. If you don't dare to take responsibility, how can you be a hero?" After that he scolded poplar fruit. "Poplar fruit. Used to use 2 blades too. You want to use a saber to fight the padao? In any case, you were taught by me. If you weaken my prestige, I won't let you off." From what he said, it seemed that poplar fruit was the disciple he was most dissatisfied with. It seemed that he didn't even want to acknowledge him as his disciple. Poplar fruit smiled bitterly. He hurried over and asked Meng Sanhua to give him the other miaodao. Meng Sanhua handed it over, but his eyes were fixed on poplar fruit's left hand. He found that the heavy miaodao in poplar fruit's hand was as light as a leaf of reed. Meng Sanhua twirled the 2 blades in his left and right hands in a relaxed and natural manner. Meng Sanhua's eyes widened. He was beginning to wonder if he had been mistaken. Starting over, poplar fruit could feel that Yin Luqing was more domineering than before. It was a bit like the generals who led the charge on the battlefield in ancient times. It was as if they were going to tear the world apart. Now that the saber had grown longer, it was indeed different. However, Yanggua had also changed a little. Equipped with 2 miaodao, Yanggua gave people a feeling that he was somewhat unpredictable. The 2 miaodao were held together on the left and right side of each other. The light in his eyes was restrained, but they were as agile as an eagle's eyes, making people feel that he was a little mysterious. In the first 2 or 3 minutes, the 2 were still testing each other. In fact, it was the same as the previous round. They each followed their own steps. Poplar fruit was not as erratic as before. The only difference was that their weapons had changed. Yin Luqing's blade was longer. The longer it was, the stronger it was, and the shorter it was, the more dangerous it was. The longer the blade, the stronger it was. Poplar fruit could clearly feel how difficult it was for him to reach Yin Luqing. Yin Luqing's feeling was not so obvious. Poplar fruit was only parrying. He did not take the initiative to attack. He did not feel the difference between 1 blade and 2 blades. However, Yin Luqing realized that his judgment was wrong. Poplar fruit's dual blades were not as bad as he thought. On the contrary, poplar fruit's dual blades were not sluggish at all. It was as if his left and right hands were very agile. "There's nothing to see. Yin Luqing lost." Xiongkahu shook his head dispiritedly. He was a grandmaster in using blades. He could see through the situation at a glance. The usage of padao, long blade and short blade were different. After all, the ancients once said, a single blade depends on the hand, a double blade depends on the movement, and a large blade depends on the hand. The hand refers to the position of the blade's grip. Some blades had about 20 centimeters of copper on the hilt and plate. This piece was called the hand. Usually, when chopping, one hand would hold the hilt and the other hand would grasp the hilt. Only by exerting force from the waist could the long blade's vigorous strength be exerted. However, the basic routine of the padao was the same for the long and short blades. It was not as big as the changes between the two miaodao and the single miaodao. At present, from Yin Liuqing's performance, it was difficult to have a greater breakthrough in power. At this time, Poplar Fruit had not started to show his power. Just as Xiong Kehu thought, after Poplar Fruit observed clearly, he began to use the unpredictable 24 styles of the two miaodao. This time he did not use the 8 meteor steps because it was no longer necessary. Poplar Fruit's figure suddenly became strange. Although it was not as fleeting as the 8 meteor steps, it was twisting left and right, swaying rapidly. The two miaodao attacked one direction, giving people the feeling that he was dealing with two equally powerful assassins at the same time. To be honest, old man Xiong Kehu could also do this when he was at his peak, but it was definitely not as easy as Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit was someone who could multitask. To paraphrase a phrase from Mr. Jin's martial arts novels, Poplar Fruit could fight left and right. The two miaodao seemed to be tailor-made for him. In his hands, it was as if they had become two spiritual snakes with self-consciousness. It was still the same few stabs, flicks, flips, and slices, but the style became mysterious and unpredictable. Yin Liuqing was forced to use both the blade and the hilt. She also broke out stronger combat power beyond her limit to block Poplar Fruit's first 4 blades. In less than 2 seconds, Yin Liuqing's forehead was sweating profusely, because she was too focused and nervous. However, this was only the beginning of Poplar Fruit. With Poplar Fruit's long breath and abundant physical strength, the next wave of storm-like attacks was coming. Chapter 635. The competition ended amidst the children's exclamations. Apart from Yin Liuqing, who felt a little disappointed, the others naturally accepted the result, including Meng Sanhua. He was finally convinced. This guy is a monster. No wonder I can't beat him. Meng Sanhua snatched Poplar Fruit's miaodao and complained to his comrades, "Look at this miaodao. He can even play with it. Don't you think he's a monster?" Yin Liuqing also tried it. Her face changed when she held it in her hand. Bear 1, Bear 2 and Bear 3, who were as strong as bulls, weighed the miaodao in their hands and said, "Really? I think this miaodao is just right for me. Liuqing's miaodao is as light as a feather, just like a woman's." Ah! Poplar Fruit scratched his head. Under the praise of his brothers, he didn't get carried away. Xiong Kehu didn't ask Poplar Fruit about the changes he made to the miaodao footwork. After the competition, he calmly told the children to go home and study. Then he went to the ancestral hall to inspect it with his hands behind his back. It wasn't that he wasn't curious, nor that he had nothing to say to Poplar Fruit. It was just that Xiong Kehu suddenly realized the gap between him and Poplar Fruit. He should have realized it when he was teaching Poplar Fruit how to use the miaodao. Xiong Kehu himself was a grandmaster and a gifted martial arts genius. But compared to Poplar Fruit, he was far from being a grandmaster. Xiong Kehu became famous in his teens. Then he wandered in the martial arts world for more than 10 years. It wasn't until he joined the army and experienced a storm of bullets that he came back that he reached the level of a grandmaster. It could be said that it wasn't easy to achieve good results. But what about Poplar Fruit? He had only learned miaodao for less than half a month, and he was already able to compete with him. Although he was old and his skills were not as good as they were in the past, to be able to defeat Xiong Kehu, Poplar Fruit had already touched the threshold of a miaodao grandmaster. This was only half a month of hard work. Xiong Kehu believed that in less than a year, Poplar Fruit would surpass him at his peak. What made Xiong Kehu feel even more inferior to Poplar Fruit was Poplar Fruit's ability to innovate. Poplar Fruit had taught Kiki that children's boxing skills were not worth mentioning. That was, at most, a taiji fist at the level of a public square dance. However, Poplar Fruit had actually changed the miaodao's footwork during the battle, and even made the one-handed miaodao have decent combat power. This was a place that Xiong Kehu could never reach. Xiongkahu had spent all his energy and summed up his experience of assassination on the battlefield before he could successfully optimize the bear-style Miaodao into its current strange, ever-changing, and elusive style. It could be said that this was a kung fu suitable for assassins in the night. Poplar Fruit's speed of innovation was a huge blow to Xiongkahu, and it also made him understand that geniuses could not be judged by common sense. Perhaps this was the case. If Poplar Fruit was allowed to develop freely, he would have a more brilliant future. Grandmaster was never the limit of geniuses like him. If he were 20 years younger, Xiongkahu would also be very interested in learning the changes that Poplar Fruit had just made. He might not accept all of them, but he would definitely benefit a lot. However, he was already in his 70s. Although his body was still healthy, he no longer had the ambition that he had when he was young. If he were to rashly learn a new kung fu, he might mess himself up. Xiongkahu also maintained a high level of confidence in his two-handed Miaodao. Therefore, he simply did not want to ask, and simply guarded his achievements for the rest of his life. The world now belonged to the young people. The holidays of the Special Forces were not long. When Wenjua and Poplar Fruit walked back, he told him, "Poplar Fruit, we're going back tomorrow." "So soon? You're not going to stay here for a few more days?" Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. At the very most, his big brother and the others had not stayed in the Hmong village for more than 3 days. "Just a few days off. There are still things to do when we go back. However, it's been a long time since I stayed in a mountainous area so far away from the city. These few days can be considered as a vacation for me." Wenjua laughed. "Xiong-san and the others are very happy." Poplar Fruit pointed at Xiong-san and the others who were playing with a group of naughty kids behind them and laughed. "I didn't expect the kids to not be afraid of them." Wenjua shook his head and said, "Xiong-san is gentle and has a natural attraction to kids. My Xiaochen is also like that. He likes to play with him the most." In the afternoon, Poplar Fruit asked Xiong Jishir to gather the children in the Xiong village. Although the ancestral hall was not big enough to satisfy all the children, many of them still gathered together. "Now we'll test 60 computers. Next time we'll try a few more," Kai Simin said to Poplar Fruit with sweat all over his forehead. Then he turned around and hurriedly ran to a child and shouted, "Hey, wait a minute. You can't press it like that." There were too many children. At least 3 children were sitting in front of each computer. Some of them did not have stools and were standing. Fortunately, Xiong Jiwu was maintaining order with Xiong Jishir and a few other men from the Hmong village, so it would not cause too much chaos. Poplar Fruit nodded. He saw Xiong Jiwu's affinity among the children from this incident. Generally, when Xiong Jiwu gently exhorted them, the children would obediently sit there with their hands behind their backs, unlike Kai Simin who made a fuss. After a while, Kai Simin found that the children knew nothing about how to use the computer. He simply put the keyboard, which was also the main computer, into the desk drawer to prevent any naughty children from accidentally touching it. Poplar Fruit pondered for a moment. He felt that before the next test, it was necessary to prepare a basic lesson for the children on how to use the computer. After everything was ready, Poplar Fruit walked back to Xiong Jiwu's house, which was more than 200 meters away from the ancestral hall. He went up to his room, turned on the computer, and clicked on the courseware that he had prepared. This time, it was the PowerPoint that Poplar Fruit had prepared yesterday. He wanted to try to simulate the classroom effect of the future long-distance education, so he chose a language lesson for the 3rd grade of primary school as the content of the lesson. After Fat Dragon confirmed with Kai Simin that everything was ready, Poplar Fruit began to teach the children. The process did not need to be described too much. Poplar Fruit had spent a lot of effort for this lesson. Not only did he quote the classics, but he also thought of a lot of interactive links to stimulate the atmosphere of the classroom. Of course, there were also questions in the classroom. The children who were active and answered the questions well had the opportunity to go down the mountain to the city to broaden their horizons. After that, Poplar Fruit returned to the ancestral hall to summarize the problems found in the middle with Kai Simin and the others. This time, with the help of the computer, the children could check Poplar Fruit's courseware on the computer, and they could also see the projection of Poplar Fruit's figure on the screen. because it was the first time, there were some adjustments that needed to be made. For example, Poplar Fruit actually walked out of the camera while talking, and the interactive software designed by Fat Dragon still had a lot of flaws. These needed to be constantly summarized and optimized. Chapter 636. At night, Hiwenjua guessed that Kiki had fallen asleep, so he came to find Poplar Fruit to chat. "Do you know why I rarely talk to you?" Hiwenjua asked with a smile as the two of them lay on the stone platform of the martial arts arena, looking up at the quiet and bright galaxy. "Why?" Poplar Fruit asked curiously. "Because you don't drink." Hiwenjua chuckled and said, "Usually it's okay, but when you see a bottle of wine, you become shy like a girl. Not happy." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "It's not that I don't drink, it's that I quit drinking. Drinking is not a good thing." Since they were talking about it, Poplar Fruit talked about the reason why he quit drinking. Of course, the reason was because of Kiki. "You little brat, you have a child at such a young age." Hiwenjua's attention shifted to Kiki. He shook his head and said, "You haven't even experienced the wind, flower, snow and moon, and you've already said goodbye to the wind. Your big brother admires you for being able to take responsibility, but I also feel sorry for you." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "That's not it. If it weren't for Kiki, I wouldn't have been able to travel among the flowers. Let me think, if Kiki didn't appear, if that accident didn't happen, I would have honestly done my foreign trade work, saved enough money, and married my girlfriend." "Ex-girlfriend? She was my high school classmate," Poplar Fruit explained. "Buy a house, get married, and have a baby. It's still the same ordinary life. Actually, I think that after having Kiki, my life has become more exciting." Poplar Fruit looked up at the sky, but his eyes were unfocused. In his mind, Kiki's frown and smile appeared. He murmured, "I like the happiness my daughter brings me. Really, I can't imagine what my world would be like without Kiki. It's unimaginable." Hiwenjua, who was also a father, nudged Poplar Fruit with his elbow and said with a smile, "Are you thinking of how she looked when she was just born?" Indeed, Poplar Fruit was recalling the time when Kiki was born. His memory was too good. Everything that happened more than a year ago seemed to be still vivid in his mind. When Kiki was just born, she was still wrinkled. When she slept at night, her little fist, the size of a rice spoon, tightly clenched his left index finger. The gentleness of blood still lingered in his heart. "Enough. Look at how sweet you are." Hiwenjua couldn't stand Poplar Fruit's affectionate attitude. He pushed him with a smile and said, "You're making me want to have another daughter. I called you out because I want to ask you what you're up to with this long-distance education." Hiwenjua asked curiously, "I saw more than 300 children this afternoon. You seem to have exceeded your expectations by making such a big fuss, right?" Hiwenjua, after all, had someone in a high position in his family. He didn't just look at things from one perspective. From the overall situation, Poplar Fruit had indeed made a big fuss by designing software and researching curriculum for a primary school in the mountains with more than 300 children. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, "At first I did want to do something good for the children in the village. Later, I thought that if I could do this model well, maybe it could be popularized and change the current education system. I don't dare to say, but there are so many children in the world who can't afford to go to school. I want them to finish primary school through long-distance education, or even middle school and high school." Hiwenjua was shocked by Poplar Fruit's whimsical idea. He was still thinking. Poplar Fruit talked about his own experience, as if he was recalling something. "You don't know how hard life was for the Xiong family when I first met them." Poplar Fruit told Hiwenjua a series of stories about how he encountered Xiong Jiwu's robbery, and then learned that Xiong Xiaolin wanted to give up school to save her mother. If Poplar Fruit hadn't intervened, the Xiong family in the deep mountains would have been isolated by society. There would be no teachers to teach the children, and the children wouldn't know what the outside world was like. Without education, they can only stay in this valley forever. Poplar Fruit said, "If they can have a little education, even if they can't get into college, they will have a chance to succeed in the outside world. Only when they go out, will they have a chance to come back and change the poor appearance of their hometown. I want more children to be able to read and have the ability to let themselves and the people in their hometown live a good life. Your ambition is, very great and also very great. Hiwenjua nodded and said. In fact, the Xiong family is not bad. It's in the southwest border area and the northwest. I've been there before when I was on a mission. Many villages are also very poor. They can't even find food and clothing at home, let alone go to school. Hiwenjua asked. There are also a few comrades. I heard them say that their hometown is very poor. Some parents have an accident while working outside. Only the grandma in her 70s or 80s takes care of the children. They rely on the relief fund and the family to feed their children. The government came to persuade the children to go to school, saying that the school fees are waived by the country, and the village can subsidize some tuition and miscellaneous expenses. Guess what the children said? Poplar Fruit guessed. They refused. Well, the girl was only 8 years old and was very sensible. She said that if I went to school, there would be no one to wash the clothes and cook for her grandma at home. She would be worried. She refused to go no matter what. Hiwenjua sighed and said, Our country has never lacked these things. There are tragic situations everywhere. As they spoke, the two of them sat cross-legged. I know that you've made a lot of money from selling games recently. Hiwenjua finally said what he wanted to say. It's not wrong to say that Dada helps the world. But have you thought about it? You've invested more than 1,000,000 yuan, and it's only for 300 people. There are so many poor children in the country. Can you help them all? Hiwenjua was concerned about Poplar Fruit. He knew that his younger brother was a scholar, and was not cut out for business. He had not bought a house in Yangcheng. It was not easy for him to earn such a large sum of money, but he wanted to spend it on charity. He wanted to persuade Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit was stunned. Big Brother He's question reminded him of the question he asked Fong Beibei in the past. It was very similar. There are so many stray dogs in the world. Can you save all of them? Fong Beibei's answer was, I can't save all of them. But if I save one, there will be a stray dog that doesn't have to live on the streets. It will have a warm nest that belongs to it. Poplar Fruit smiled brightly. He said firmly, I know I can't help everyone, but I will do my best. Hiwenjua was stunned for a long time. He did not try to persuade him again. He patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said, Reform and good things are not easy. You have to be careful with your words and actions. It's still the same old saying. If there's any problem, come and find me. My dad is in Guangdong province, so he has some say here. Chapter 637. Early the next morning, Poplar Fruit drove his brothers back to Yangcheng. Hiwenjua and the others arrived at the county station, and refused to let Poplar Fruit send them back. It's okay, it's only a 3-hour drive to the airport in the city. Poplar Fruit argued. Okay, hurry up and go back. Hiwenjua waved his hand and said with a smile, I know you have other tasks today. Poplar Fruit, aren't you about to start school? Why don't you go back with us? Xiongsen asked in a muffled voice. I still have to go back in 2 days. I have to explain the things here clearly. Poplar Fruit explained. There was no reluctance. The soldiers were very straightforward. They left as soon as they said they were going. They waved their hands and did not look back. They carried their bags and got on the county bus. After sending off Hiwenjua and the others, Poplar Fruit drove back to Xiong village without stopping. On the way, Kiki, who was in the passenger seat, asked curiously, Papa, are we going home? Yes, I'll take you back the day after tomorrow. Don't you miss home and Sister Beibei? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Kiki's answer was a little hesitant. She said, I miss. Kiki also misses Sister Beibei. Kiki also misses Grandma Lu and Uncle Mosquito. But when we go home, will we not be able to see Sister Xiaolin and Little Fengge? Poplar Fruit pondered for a moment. He did not directly answer Kiki's question. He said, After we go home, your sister Xiaolin and Little Fengge also have to go to school. They can't play with you like they did during this period of time. However, I'll give them lessons. When it's the holidays, I'll take you here to play with them, okay? Poplar Fruit was secretly changing the logic. Kiki did not hear anything wrong for the time being, so she nodded in confusion. Then, she chattered with her father about the adventure in the mountains that a little brother told them yesterday. Before they reached the foot of the mountain, the sharp-eyed Kiki cried out in surprise, "Papa, Papa!" Kiki saw Brother Anshuan. She shouted while trying to break free from the restraint of the baby safety belt. Poplar Fruit amusedly pressed his overly energetic daughter down on the seat and said with a smile, "What's the hurry? Isn't I going to pick them up now?" It was really a coincidence. Poplar Fruit had actually arranged for Xiong Jishir to take the two children to play in the county town first. Then Poplar Fruit would send Big Brother he and the others back, and then go to find them on the way. Unexpectedly, it did not take long for Poplar Fruit to send them off. When he rushed back, he happened to see Xiong Jishir and the two children waiting for the bus at the foot of the mountain. It seemed that they had been waiting for a long time. It was said that the bus in the county town would only come once every 2 hours, and the time was not fixed. It was very difficult for the Miao people in the mountains to go to the county town without Poplar Fruit's Land Rover. "Jishir, I'm back. Tell the children to get in the car." Poplar Fruit laughed as he stuck his head out of the car window and greeted them. Great! Xiong Anshuan was the most lively. He left Xiong Jishir and his other little friend, and ran over excitedly. However, he did not know how to open the door, so he could only wait for Xiong Jishir to come over and open the door for him. "Uncle Poplar Fruit, nice to meet you." Xiong Anshuan climbed into the back seat, and excitedly started to talk to Kiki. On the other hand, the other girl, who was about 10 years old, politely greeted Poplar Fruit. "Hello, An Mei." Poplar Fruit also responded with a smile. "An Mei, do you see the black bag in the back seat? Uncle just bought some soy milk in the county town. Can you share it with Brother Anshuan and Uncle Jishir?" "Okay." Xiong Anmei nodded obediently. She shared the soy milk and asked Poplar Fruit, "Uncle, do you and Kiki want some?" "No need." Before Poplar Fruit could finish, Kiki shouted, "Sister Xiaomei, I want some. Kiki wants to drink soy milk." Poplar Fruit reached out to stop Xiong Anmei from handing Kiki the soy milk. He smiled and took out Kiki's milk bottle from the armrest box. He said reproachfully, "Kiki wants everything. Anmei, don't pay attention to her. Kiki, you haven't finished drinking yours." Kiki held the milk bottle and muttered, "But Kiki wants that." Poplar Fruit explained, "Why? Don't they all taste the same? You don't know how to use a straw, so Dad poured the soy milk into your milk bottle. Have you forgotten?" It was not easy to take care of children, especially when there was a restless person like Xiong Anshuan. It was difficult for Xiong Jishir to deal with him. Poplar Fruit had to intervene several times to calm down the car. It could also be seen that Xiong Jishir's kung fu was good, but his ability to discipline children was far inferior to Xiong Jiwu's. Back in the county town, Poplar Fruit did not plan to buy beautiful new clothes for the two children this time. It was not that he did not have money, but he suddenly felt that if he bought new clothes for them, it would inevitably cause a competition when they went back. Especially Xiong Anshuan. Although he was very smart, he liked to show off more. If the children quarreled or fought because of the clothes, Poplar Fruit did not want that to happen. After shopping for a while, Poplar Fruit took them to the sports store. In fact, this was his main destination today. Yesterday, when he was sparring with Yin Luqing, there were so many children surrounding them. After that, it was unknown if they were inspired by them, but many children ran to the martial arts practice field and started to throw themselves around. When Poplar Fruit saw this scene, he felt uncomfortable in his heart. He always felt that something was missing. Later in the evening, Poplar Fruit finally figured it out. It turned out that the children on the mountain lacked the most basic sports measures. Not to mention basketball stands and basketballs, even the most simple table tennis was not available. Nowadays, people were talking about the all-round development of moral, intellectual, physical, aesthetic, and labor. Classes were only to cultivate children's wisdom, but sports, which could make children develop in a balanced way, were not available. Poplar Fruit felt that there was still a big flaw in the long-distance education he did. So today, Poplar Fruit took the children to choose sports equipment and planned to buy them together. When Xiong Anshuan and the others entered the sports store, it was as if they had entered the Grandview Garden. Everything was strange and new, especially Xiong'anshuan. He was so curious that he wanted to touch everything. I know this. Kiki ran over and wanted to pick up a basketball, but the basketball was a little too big for her. She could not pick it up. My papa is good at basketball. I also want to learn. Xiong'anshuan looked at Kiki enviously and said. Xiong'anmei was also very excited. She ran to the colorful skipping rope, pointed at the poplar fruit and said, Uncle, I have also seen this. I heard from Teacher Meng that the big brothers and sisters in the city have to take the skipping rope test in junior high school. Chapter 638. To be honest, in a small county like Lidong, there was no need to ask for a customer-first service experience. After Poplar Fruit and the others entered the sports store, no salesperson came up to talk to them. The boss and his wife sat behind the counter, laughing and talking about the recent events in the county. Poplar Fruit pricked up his ears to listen. Of course, they were talking about the recent earthquake in the officialdom. This big change not only affected the officialdom, but also affected the lives of many ordinary people in the county. Of course, it became a topic of conversation after dinner. The service experience was bad, but at least they didn't see Xiong'anshuan and the others in ragged clothes. The boss was kind, and inadvertently kept a big customer. I want 7 basketballs, 5 footballs, 10 pairs of table tennis rackets, and 20 pairs of table tennis. For badminton, I want 7 pairs of rackets, and 10 shuttlecocks. Poplar Fruit turned around and pointed out, and some skipping ropes. I want something more durable. Boss, don't cheat me. If the quality is good this time, I'll buy from you again next time. The boss looked at Poplar Fruit, stunned, and asked, Little brother, are you going to open a store after buying it? No, I'm buying it for the children to play with. Poplar Fruit smiled and patted Xiong'anshuan's head. After confirming that Yongguo was purely doing a good deed, the boss's face was full of admiration. He patted his chest and said, Little brother, I've been running this shop for more than 10 years, and I've never seen a kind-hearted person like you. Don't worry, I'll definitely give you the best quality and the best price. Poplar Fruit saw the boss's wife's hesitant expression. He smiled and said, Boss, I think your price is quite reasonable. Even if you give me a discount, I don't think you'll make much money. Let's just follow the price in your store. You just have to help me pick out the best goods. Hearing Poplar Fruit's words, the lady boss behind the boss also smiled and said, Little brother, don't worry. Our old Wang is an honest person. He definitely won't cheat you on the quality. The reason why the lady boss was so happy was mainly because Lidong had bought a lot of Poplar Fruit this time. The total turnover was close to 8,000 yuan. In a small town like Lidong, it was equivalent to almost a month of their hard work. That's right. If you find that the quality is not good, feel free to bring it back. We will replace it within 30 days. And that badminton racket, if the thread is broken, feel free to bring it back. We will replace the thread for you. We won't charge you. The boss laughed. The boss later promised that he would deliver the goods to Poplar Fruit, which made Poplar Fruit breathe a sigh of relief. Although Poplar Fruit's Land Rover was very big, it was still insufficient to stuff so much sports equipment into it. And Shun, and May, what do you want to eat? Poplar Fruit asked. After shopping at the sports equipment store, it was almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They hadn't had lunch yet. Xiong'anshuan rushed to answer. I want to eat Mackenzie's. Xiong'anmei also licked her lips and nodded. Mackenzie's was a fast food restaurant in a small town like Lidong that imitated McDonald's and KFC in the United States. The food it sold was exactly the same as the other two, burgers, fries and fried chicken. Poplar Fruit had seen restaurants similar to Mackenzie's before. There were quite a few in his hometown as well. However, after McDonald's and KFC opened their stores, the copycat restaurants gradually closed down. Everyone went for the authentic Western fast food. Actually, the taste was not too different. It was just that almost everyone felt that a foreign monk was better at chanting scriptures. Previously, Poplar Fruit had asked Xiong Jisher to bring the 2 children shopping. Xiong Jisher had brought them to eat Mackenzie's. The food was completely different from Chinese food. It was novel and delicious. After they went back, the children in Xiong village talked about it. This was something that Poplar Fruit had not expected. The children had praised Mackenzie's as the most delicious food in the city. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly. He didn't try to correct their thoughts. In fact, it didn't matter what they ate. The result was to guide the children to maintain their desire for the outside world. Wasn't it all the same? However, Poplar Fruit wasn't willing to let Kiki eat unhealthy food like fried chicken. Kiki was too young. Her body wasn't immune to calories and unhealthy elements like older children. Poplar Fruit ordered mashed potatoes and vegetable salad for Kiki and fed her. At first, Kiki didn't want to. She also wanted to eat when she saw her brothers and sisters eating happily. However, she was stopped by her father. At this time, Xiong Anshuan was restless again. He waved a fragrant New Orleans roast chicken leg and tempted Kiki with a smile. Kiki, look, I have a chicken leg to eat. He also turned his head and made an intoxicated expression. Seeing this, Kiki pouted and pulled her father's sleeve. She felt wronged. Poplar Fruit had to comfort her. Next time when we go home, Dad will cook for Kiki, okay? Dad's chicken is 100 times better than Brother Anshuan's. Yes, yes. Kiki, who trusted her father 100%, was very easy to fool. She nodded happily and proudly raised her chin to Xiong Anshuan. She said, Anshuan Gij, my father's chicken leg is 100 times better than yours. Kiki won't share it with you. I don't want it. Mackenzie's is the best. Xiong Anshuan retorted unconvinced. Xiong Anshuan. Poplar Fruit patted his butt and scolded with a smile. Eat your food. If you make trouble again, I won't let you eat it. Poplar Fruit finally appeased Kiki. He couldn't let Xiong Anshuan tease Kiki again. After eating, Poplar Fruit took them to walk around the shopping mall. The big LCD TV, the dazzling array of beautiful clothes, almost every shop made Xiong Anshuan and Xiong Anmei unable to move their legs. Study hard. In the future, when you go into society, you will have the opportunity to earn more money and be able to buy these good things for yourself. Poplar Fruit patted them on the shoulder and said, Poplar Fruit wouldn't tell them that if they studied hard, they would be able to earn a lot of money in the future. But he would give them a dream, a goal to strive for. This time, when he took the children out of the county, it was much more peaceful. They didn't meet the BMW hooligan. Of course, when his father was arrested, Liang Huasheng, the #1 young master in the past, didn't have a good time. His family's car, house and bank book were all sealed. He had no money and no followers. He was like a rat crossing the street. Liang Huasheng didn't dare to appear in this small county where he used to be a tyrant. Liang Huasheng hid in a relative's house in the city. However, his background wasn't clean. It was only a matter of time before the police caught him. Such a small character who was no longer a threat had no value in appearing again. Chapter 639. For the next 2 days, Poplar Fruit traveled between the 3 Hmong villages nonstop. He paid special attention to the other 2 Hmong villages other than Xiong village to understand their children's situation. Actually, they didn't have any complaints about Poplar Fruit setting up a unified teaching center in Xiong village. In fact, they were looking forward to the effects of Poplar Fruit's long-distance education. The 2 Hmong villages weren't too far away from Xiong village. Even if the children walked slowly, it would take them at most an hour to walk. Moreover, the size of their villages added together wasn't as big as Xiong village. They felt lucky to be able to rely on Xiong village to provide education for their children. Although walking an hour to school was unimaginably difficult for people living in a big city, for children living in the mountains, it was actually nothing more than a common occurrence. However, a 2-hour round trip was too time-consuming. Poplar Fruit considered whether to set up a student hostel in Xiong village, so that the children who came from afar could stay in Xiong village and go back on the weekends. However, no matter which Hmong village they were from, they lived a tight life. They would rather walk back and forth for 2 hours a day than spend more on food and accommodation. Poplar Fruit had no choice but to study this problem later. His idea was to let the children work hard this semester. During this process, Poplar Fruit would try his best to think of a way. He could either pay for the food and accommodation with his own money, or ask Mengping for help. It wasn't easy to ask Mengping for help. That guy was very stubborn. Without any results to back it up, Poplar Fruit felt that it would be very difficult to convince him. Take it slow. Everything was always difficult at the beginning. However, Poplar Fruit didn't feel at ease letting the children from the other two Hmong villages go to school and go home alone. After all, they were still primary school children. Under Poplar Fruit's insistence, although the two Hmong village leaders didn't take it seriously, they agreed to Poplar Fruit's request in the end. After school started, they would arrange for someone to pick up the children from their villages every day to ensure their safety on the road. As for the sports equipment they bought, Yonghua asked Uncle He to design and plan the basketball court, football field, and other venues according to the information on the internet. In the mountains, the requirements naturally could not be too high. The basketball court and the football court were expected to be designed together. The basketball court could be used to play basketball, and if it was extended out a little, it could also be used to play small-scale football. The table tennis court will use wooden planks to form a table, and you can play by pulling a line in the middle. As for the badminton court, it was even simpler. Just find an empty space and draw a line in the middle of it. Therefore, after these sports equipment were bought back, it caused a mad scramble among the children. Poplar Fruit bought a lot of equipment. Apart from giving 2 basketballs, a football, 2 pairs of table tennis rackets, and a pair of badminton rackets to the other 2 Hmong villages, the rest were left in Xiong village as teaching equipment. Naturally, the head teacher Xiong Jiwu was in charge of them. Time didn't allow Poplar Fruit to teach the children how to use all the equipment, so Poplar Fruit looked for Xiong Jisher for one-on-one guidance. He didn't teach much, mainly talking about the rules and methods of various sports. As for the rest, he let Xiong Jisher learn by watching videos and then teach it to the children. Of course, this was just a plan. Poplar Fruit's plan was to find a student from the sports department to give him long-distance guidance. However, the best way to guide sports was face-to-face education. Poplar Fruit didn't know if long-distance education was feasible, so he prepared for both sides. At night, he discussed with Fat Dragon and Kai Simin, the 2 night owls, until late at night. As they had done 2 tests in the middle of the night, the results were getting better and better, but there were still many bugs that needed to be fixed. Fat Dragon, help me see if you can design a software, or we can design a website for the children to do their homework. Poplar Fruit said. You still want to do online homework? Fat Dragon asked doubtfully. Poplar Fruit nodded and said, but I don't want to just make a website for online homework. What do you mean? Fat Dragon was confused by Poplar Fruit's words. What's the purpose of doing homework? Poplar Fruit asked Fat Dragon. The teacher wants to torture the students. He doesn't want them to go home to watch TV or play on the computer. Fat Dragon curled his lips. When he was a student, he hated homework. He often asked Poplar Fruit to copy his homework. Poplar Fruit rolled his eyes and said, "Don't talk nonsense. I'm talking about serious matters. Doing homework is nothing more than to let the children consolidate the content of the day's study." Poplar Fruit said, "But if it's just doing homework, and if it's the same as before, to be honest, I don't think it's effective at all." "What are you going to do?" Fat Dragon stretched and said, "Just tell me your request, and I'll do it according to your request." Poplar Fruit took a piece of paper and said to Fat Dragon, "I think this way. If there are 100 knowledge points in Book A, then I will create a question bank with 20 or 50 questions for each of these 100 knowledge points. The numbers I mentioned are just a concept. I'll ask Bei to calculate later and tell you how much I need. This is just the basic. If it's upgraded, there will be a corresponding question bank." Poplar Fruit said, "It's not just a question bank. For each question, there will be a corresponding detailed answer and analysis process. It's equivalent to putting the answer at the back. Then there's the logic of the software or website." Poplar Fruit paused for a moment and said, "The teacher will tick the knowledge points he designed during the lecture, and then the software will randomly select the corresponding questions to make a test paper that will appear on the student's computer. It's a bit like how we do online questionnaires. One question is 1 page, but the difference is that if you don't successfully complete this question, you can't go on to the next step." Poplar Fruit shrugged and said, "What if you do the wrong question?" The system will show the correct answer and the analysis process, guiding the student step by step to think. Well, now that you've figured out how to solve this question, it's time to draw inferences. There's no need for 3 questions. As long as the student can complete 2 similar questions randomly selected by the system, he can go on to the next step. Poplar Fruit laughed. Pay attention here. The system needs to remember which knowledge point and which question type the student made a mistake in. I need it to be like the Ebbinghaus memory curve. I need it to arrange for the student to repeat these questions in the next few days to consolidate the memory. Poplar Fruit emphasized the repeated review process. We need the system to help the student learn, so we have to consider it more comprehensively. They need to review until they've confirmed that they've memorized it. Poplar Fruit said, of course, our system will also generate a set of wrong questions to record the types of questions he missed. Even if he memorized it in the past few days, he can find it in the system if he needs to review it for the final exam. Chapter 640. In the evening, Meng Ping received a call. Usually, he would not call for no reason. His call was not for small talk but to bring good news. The day after Meng Ping submitted his report, the acting county head approved his application. Then the Power Supply Bureau and the Telecommunications Bureau did not drag their feet. They arranged for the construction team to be ready the day after tomorrow to help with the installation. Everything went smoothly. It was a sharp contrast to the previous difficult progress. Poplar Fruit and Meng Ping did not expect that it could be so smooth because of the aftermath of Liang Xingtao's fall. The Education Bureau was affected the most. But what surprised everyone was that Meng Ping did not retreat. He achieved 2 consecutive jumps in just 1 year. Now, even the acting county head felt that this guy's background was too big. So when Meng Ping made his application, several leaders discussed it and tacitly approved it. They also instructed their subordinates to implement it seriously. No matter how wonderful this misunderstanding was, Poplar Fruit and the others did not know about it. Even if they knew, they would just laugh it off. Perhaps it was because of the stimulation of this good news. Even though it was already past 1 o'clock in the morning, Poplar Fruit's brain became more and more active. He thought while talking, no, it's not just for the existence of homework. Poplar Fruit clapped his hands and said excitedly, we want to provide an opportunity for self-growth for the children who have the energy to learn. You know, some children are special. They are smarter than the children around them. They don't need to learn step by step. If they are given a suitable track, they will become talents faster. Poplar Fruit said, but the problem is we don't know which children belong to this special group. And we don't know where their limits are. Poplar Fruit laughed. Then let them discover it themselves. So our software, Fat Dragon said, it's still a website. If it's a software, the capacity may be very large. If it's a website, it can be supported by the server outside. Alright, our website's topic design logic will be divided into 2 parts. Poplar Fruit stood up, walked back and forth and said, part of it is the basics. It's not too difficult. The main purpose is to let the children consolidate the knowledge they have learned and learn to connect the knowledge points to solve the problem. The second part is the self-advancement part. Of course, this is optional. Children who have the ability, interest, or desire to improve themselves can choose to do it. Poplar Fruit said, let's take mathematics as an example. Choose questions that are easy to understand, and try to choose questions that stimulate their own thinking. What if he doesn't? Fat Dragon asked, I know you might have some Olympiad questions here, but you didn't teach them in class, so how could they know how to do it? Could it be that only super powerful geniuses are able to attempt your questions? Poplar Fruit nodded and said, you're right, I didn't think it through. Then let's do it this way. In the self-advancement part, before the start of each stage, the computer will arrange a teaching process for Xiao Duan. What kind of teaching? Fat Dragon asked. If it's like your usual classes, where the teacher is one-on-one, then it's another way to deal with it. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, without the teacher one-on-one, we can't make the volunteers wait there all the time. The current plan is to teach them in the form of textbooks. Poplar Fruit pondered for a moment and said, "Can you make the process of solving and analyzing the previous questions more colorful? Don't just have cold text. I think it might be better if you can insert some pictures, animations, and explanations in steps." "That's not a problem." Fat Dragon smiled and said, "In addition to your common PowerPoint slides abroad, there are also good courseware software such as Director, AutoWare, and so on. We can embed it in and realize your idea." Poplar Fruit smiled happily and said, "That's great. In that way, we can make the teaching part of the personal advancement more interesting, so that the children can find the fun of learning when they're self-studying." "This is not a small project, I think." Poplar Fruit frowned and said, "Can you handle it alone?" Fat Dragon looked at Poplar Fruit bitterly and said, "You finally care about me? Hey, who told me to hook up with a hands-off boss like you? Tomorrow you and Kiki will go back, leaving me and the rookie alone in this mountain." Poplar Fruit patted Fat Dragon's shoulder and said, "Capable people have more work to do. You two have worked hard. I'm going to Bali next month. I told you before that when I come back, I'll bring you 2 bags, so that you won't have to kneel on the keyboard at home. I also want a belt. Prada," Fat Dragon said with his eyes shining. "Haha, then I'll have to buy you an extra large one to wear." Poplar Fruit laughed. After laughing, Poplar Fruit said seriously, "I know that you have a lot of things to do now. In addition to improving the interactive software for our classes, you also have to make the website I'm talking about now. I'm worried that you won't be able to handle it. And I want to make them even better." Poplar Fruit paused for a moment and didn't say what he was worried about. He asked, "Are you busy in the company now? Could you spare a few people to help out? You can set up a project team. I'll provide you with some funds, and the price will be according to the market price. It's the same as if your company accepted a single project." Fat Dragon didn't refuse. He was now the boss of a company. Although the company was relatively unorganized, he had to look at the problem from the perspective of others. Fat Dragon thought for a moment and said, "Most people have nothing to do at the moment. 2 people in Nanua are making a small game, so they might not be able to spare some time. Everyone else can help." Poplar Fruit nodded and said, "Then you can help arrange this. How much money do you need? Give me a number." Fat Dragon thought for a moment and said, "It won't be too much. You're doing a charity project, so we'll give you a discount. How about $10,000? "So little?" Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. "It's just a website. Do you think it'll be expensive?" Fat Dragon laughed. "In fact, many companies in the country can do this job. We just do it better." Fat Dragon was very confident, but not blindly. "Isn't there an interactive software?" Poplar Fruit asked. "That's just copying. There are too many similar software on the market. It's very simple," Fat Dragon laughed. "Just treat it as a friendly sponsorship." Poplar Fruit hesitated for a moment, then said, "I can't let you guys lose too much. I'll give you 100,000 RMB, round it up." Fat Dragon laughed. "All right, you're the boss. You have the final say." "Oh right, our team is only responsible for the programming. We're not good at the design. You'll have to ask Uncle Hu. There are a lot of designers in your company who are better than us." If Fat Dragon didn't mention it, Poplar Fruit wouldn't even remember that he was a shareholder of Ludong. IMMT should be out soon. I wonder how the game will sell. Poplar Fruit was looking forward to it. Poplar Fruit didn't have much money left in his account, only a little over 1,000,000 RMB. However, he wasn't worried because he was earning money at a decent rate. Plus, he was going to Bali next month. Based on Ardil's generous personality, he would definitely give him a good reward. Chapter 641. Wah. I don't want to go. At the entrance of the Xiong village, Kiki's cries resounded through the sky. The parting had finally come. Although Yanghua had already told Qiqi a few days ago that she wanted her to be mentally prepared, Yanghua still didn't know what to do. However, even a teenager didn't know what it was like to be worried, not to mention that Kiki was still an ignorant child. It wasn't until Poplar Fruit carried the luggage and said goodbye to the people of the Xiong village with one hand that Kiki started to panic. It wasn't like before when he went to the county for a stroll, and then went back. This time his father was serious. After leaving this time, she didn't know when she would come back. In Kiki's mind, it seemed that she was going to leave her friends forever. Xiong Xiaolin, who was virtuous and considerate, Xiong Xiaofeng, who was naughty but took care of her, Xiong Anshuan, who often bullied her but had a good heart, and many good friends who had been with her day and night for the past half-month. At the entrance of the village, Kiki struggled desperately in her father's arms. Usually, Poplar Fruit could forcibly hold her down, but today, Poplar Fruit was carrying 2 heavy Miaodao on his back, and in his right hand was carrying a suitcase that ordinary people couldn't even lift with 2 hands. How could he hold Kiki with only his left hand? Hey, send her off. Xiong Kuhu waved his hand impatiently and said. The old man wasn't really impatient. He also felt a lot of reluctance in his heart, but the old man was never willing to expose his weak side to others, so he could only express it with this kind of irritation. Xiong Jisher grabbed Poplar Fruit's suitcase and lifted it with another young and strong Miao brother in the village. Only then did Poplar Fruit free his hands to comfort his daughter. Thanks to Xiong Xiaolin, Xiong Xiaofeng, and a few other companions following closely behind, Kiki's mood eased a little. However, this only alleviated a little. She was still sobbing with tears in her eyes, looking at her friends pitifully, causing Xiong Xiaofeng and the others to also cry. Even big sister Xiong Xiaolin, who was the oldest and most sensible, had red eyes, tears rolling in her eyes. Idiot! Poplar Fruit stroked her daughter's soft hair lovingly, rubbed her daughter's tears with her face, and said softly, It's not like you'll never see Sister Xiaolin and Brother Xiaofeng again. When you get home, you can video call them often. Even if Sister Xiaolin goes to school in the county, she'll still be able to see you when she comes back. Poplar Fruit signaled Xiong Xiaolin with his eyes. Even though she was reluctant, Xiong Xiaolin was still a sensible big sister. She came up with a hoarse voice, took Kiki's little hand and said, Kiki, don't worry, big sister will definitely go home to see you when she has the chance. But I want to play with big sister. Kiki pouted her little mouth, and tears began to roll in her eyes again. We'll come back. Poplar Fruit quickly patted her daughter's back and said, When Dad comes back from Bali, I'll definitely bring you back to see you when I have time. Besides, even if Dad doesn't have time to come back this semester, Dad will definitely come back during the winter vacation. I want to play with big sister. Kiki shook her head desperately, and then burst into tears again, leaving Poplar Fruit at a loss of what to do. In fact, Poplar Fruit had been a father for almost a year and a half. He knew that at this time, no matter what he said, Kiki would not listen. It was like when your girlfriend lost her temper. You would never be able to distinguish and reason with her. It was useless. In the face of Kiki's current situation of struggling and not wanting to leave, the only thing Poplar Fruit could do was to take Kiki back by force and let her cry until she was tired and go to sleep. After sleeping, she would be fine when she woke up. Poplar Fruit also understood the reason, but which parent would be willing to let their child cry? Yang Guo was even more unbearable. He couldn't bear to see a woman's tears the most. He couldn't bear to see Chi-Chi's tears even more, especially when the little fellow was crying her heart out and hugging his neck tightly. Yang Guo's heart felt as stifled as the capital's East Second Ring Road. Originally, when Xiong Jiwu, Xiong Jisher, and the others sent Poplar Fruit down, they were full of gratitude and wanted to say something to Poplar Fruit. In the end, Poplar Fruit only cared about comforting his daughter, so they did not even have a chance to interrupt. Finally, at the foot of the mountain, when the things were moved to the back of the Land Rover, Xiong Jiwu had a chance to talk to Poplar Fruit. At this time, he did not know what to say. What to say? He had a lot to say. He thanked Poplar Fruit for his tolerance, thanked Poplar Fruit for his generous help, and thanked Poplar Fruit for bringing changes to him and his family. The previous ones did not need to be said too much. Take the class teacher as an example. Maybe Xiong Jiwu had not really started to become a class teacher, or maybe he still had a lot to learn from Poplar Fruit and Fat Dragon. But he understood that Poplar Fruit not only provided him with a job opportunity, but also gave him a way to realize the value of life. Xiongjiwu limped over and hugged Poplar Fruit's hand. He opened his mouth several times, but no words came out. He really did not know what to say. In the end, thousands of words were gathered into one sentence. Poplar Fruit, thank you. Really, thank you. Poplar Fruit smiled and did not say anything. He just patted Xiongjiwu's shoulder, as if their ages were reversed. Poplar Fruit used a little strength to tell Xiongjiwu to work hard. Because Fat Dragon and Kai Simin were lazy, they only sent them to the gate of the village and did not go down the mountain. Therefore, at the foot of the mountain, except for the elders sent by the other two Hmong village as representatives, the rest were all people from the Xiong village. Xiongkehu actually wanted to thank Poplar Fruit. He thanked Poplar Fruit from the bottom of his heart for bringing changes to the Xiong village. But the old man could not say it out loud. He stayed at the back for a while, then suddenly pushed the crowd away and walked to the front. Okay. Why are you dawdling? Do you want to stay until it's dark? Old Master Xiongkehu looked impatient, but everyone knew that he was just being stubborn. He waved his hand as if he was annoyed by Poplar Fruit and said, Go. It took 2 hours to go down the mountain. If we go now, we can still have lunch in the county. Yanghua smiled. He actually quite liked his master's straightforward personality. He hugged Chi-Chi and couldn't clasp his hands together. He could only nod and say, All right, then I'll be going. Master, take care of yourself. Don't be angry all the time. Take care of your health. Don't be long-winded. As a hero, you have to be decisive. How can you be sentimental? Xiongkehu reprimanded him. Since you called me master, I have to take responsibility. If you don't practice your Miao-Dao diligently when you go back, I'll kill you the next time you come. Old Master Lin's meddling actually lessened the sadness of parting slightly. Of course, Kiki was not affected at all. She was still immersed in her reluctance to leave, crying and throwing a tantrum. Even if her father trapped her firmly in the seat, she kept struggling. I'm leaving. I'll be back. Poplar Fruit waved to everyone and got into the driver's seat with a smile. The Land Rover made a beautiful drift and disappeared at the end of the mountain. Chapter 642. Don't cry, okay? Poplar Fruit slowed down the car. He used his right hand to wipe off a large pearl that had accidentally popped out on his daughter's face. His eyes were still looking forward. He only occasionally glanced at his daughter from the rearview mirror. He smiled and said, You're so noisy that the other uncles and aunties almost think your father is a big bad guy. Yesterday, Kiki was the most noisy. She cried for the whole day. Poplar Fruit got out of the car to refuel, or go to the hotel to buy food. He held Kiki in his arms. The passers-by's attention were attracted by Kiki's crying. They looked at Kiki struggling in Poplar Fruit's arms and wondered if this guy was a human trafficker. Fortunately, there was a cute golden retriever at Poplar Fruit's feet. Moreover, Poplar Fruit also had the aura and appearance of a father who loved his daughter. Otherwise, people would have called the police. However, even so, Kiki still brought a lot of trouble to Poplar Fruit. The staff questioned him with doubts. Even at the hotel at night, the staff asked him a lot of questions. He didn't know if they were deliberately hitting on him. Poplar Fruit didn't think so. Now the little girl finally stopped crying. Although she would occasionally drop a few drops of golden beans, it was much better than yesterday, wasn't it? Poplar Fruit drove for a while and looked at his daughter again. Kiki didn't pay attention to her father. She was still sulking. The little girl pouted her pink little mouth and turned her head to look at the car window. She didn't know what was so beautiful about the green forest outside the car window. In any case, Chi-Chi just looked like she was very angry. If the little girl was a dozen years older, she would wear a light pink ancient costume and let out 2 soft sighs. She would definitely look like Lin Luoran. What did the book say? 2 curved eyebrows that seemed to be frowning. A pair of eyes that seemed to be happy but not happy. 2 dimples appear in a state of worry, and a body of illness attack. Little tears, little panting. Quiet like a beautiful flower shining on the water, moving like a weak willow swaying in the wind. He was referring to Kiki's pitiful appearance at this moment. Although the little fellow was in good health, she was too tired from crying yesterday. Today, when she sat in the car, there was a kind of tiredness and melancholy lingering on her brows, which added a bit of tenderness to her. Poplar Fruit couldn't help but laugh as he drove. Kiki couldn't pretend anymore. After all, she was still young. She was at odds with her father. She wanted to make a silent protest by ignoring him, but the other one didn't buy it. Kiki was impatient. She turned her face and looked at her father with resentment. She pouted and tears rolled in her eyes again. She said aggrievedly, "Papa, you're bad." The voice was not loud, but it was very powerful, expressing the master's terrible mood. Poplar Fruit raised his right hand and surrendered without principle. "Well, I've said it many times. I was wrong, but I promise, when I have time in the future, I will take you back to see your little sisters and brothers, okay?" But, Kiki said with a pause. Poplar Fruit didn't let her continue. Kiki's thoughts were now at a dead end. She believed that her father shouldn't leave. How happy it was to play with her friends on the mountain. "Don't you miss Sister Bebe?" Poplar Fruit suddenly asked. In the past, when Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe occasionally called, most of the time was occupied by Kiki. This time, Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe gradually contacted each other more and more, while Kiki and Fong Bebe talked less and less. Sometimes, Poplar Fruit waved his hand to call the little girl who was playing, but she ran away without looking back. It couldn't be considered as forgetting the old when there is a new person. Kiki still likes Sister Bebe very much. She was just a child who was playing happily. It was impossible to make her change her mind and talk to the adults quietly. Kiki hesitated whether to respond to her bad father. After a moment of silence, she muttered, "Yes," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Then when we go home this time, we can see Sister Bebe again. Shouldn't Chi-Chi act a little happier? Otherwise, Sister Bebe will say, 'Hey, why doesn't Kiki smile when she sees Sister? Does she not like Sister anymore?' That's not it." Kiki tried hard to raise her head, pouted, and said, Kiki likes Sister Bebe the most." "Yeah." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Then what should Kiki do when she sees Sister Bebe?" Kiki tilted her head and thought hard. Then she said, "Kiki will give Sister Bebe a kiss." "But your Sister Bebe doesn't like to see Kiki crying. Do you remember what Sister Bebe said?" Poplar Fruit guided her step by step. "Sister Bebe said that she likes Kiki the most when she smiles. She's like a little fairy in the sky, very beautiful." Kiki bit her lower lip and pondered for a while. She pouted and clenched her fists like a little adult. She said softly, "Kiki, don't cry anymore." "That's right." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Kiki, pinky promise with Daddy. Don't be angry anymore. You have to see Sister Bebe happily, okay?" "Okay." Kiki nodded and Pinky promised her father's big right hand seriously. He finally got the little girl. Poplar Fruit breathed a sigh of relief. However, he had used Bebe to persuade Kiki and made himself miss her deeply. Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe were the same kind of people. Both of them were very affectionate. However, they were different from ordinary couples. The two of them wouldn't feel uncomfortable just because they didn't stick together every day. This didn't mean that the two of them didn't keep in touch. During the month-long journey, Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe went from calling once every few days to talking on the phone every night. Although they hadn't seen each other for more than a month, the relationship between Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe didn't turn cold. Instead, it warmed up a lot. The most important thing was that the night before, because Poplar Fruit was in a hurry to explain everything to Fat Dragon and the others, he forgot to call for a while. Poplar Fruit remembered in the middle of the night and sent a text message to Fong Bebe to apologize. However, he found out that she was insomnia because she was worried about her gains and losses. Poplar Fruit later called to ask about Fong Bebe, and she fell asleep happily. Could it be that the two of them were already madly in love? That didn't seem like it. These two fellows, the content of their conversation had nothing to do with love. There was not a single word of sweet talk. On the phone, they talked and listened to what happened during the day, and then they gave each other ideas. It had to be said that these two top students were very interesting when they were together. Poplar Fruit wasn't good at math, but when he talked about math with Fong Bebe, he could quote from the classics. Fong Beibei's English wasn't good, but if Poplar Fruit talked about his performance at the seminar, Fong Beibei could also laugh and comment on Poplar Fruit. Okay, let's just say that this was especially sweet. Ah, we're finally back in Yangcheng. Just like the title of this volume, Fruit Spring. Xiaohan says that it's really coming. If some readers asked, then Xiaohan would like to explain. The title of the book is My Fairy Mississippi Miss is actually a pun. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the little one is obviously referring to Kiki. As for the big one, of course, it's the female lead. However, there's no doubt that Kiki's role is the most important. As you can see, Fong Beibei's scenes are much less than Kiki's. Xiaohan's fault, he didn't portray the female lead well enough. In the later plot, Xiaohan will work hard to make you guys like Beibei. Chapter 643. The insurance company that Mr. Guo recommended was really good. Poplar Fruit's Land Rover had been smashed by a rock, and after it was repaired, it had been running around for so many days without any problems. However, even if it was driving steadily on the highway, Poplar Fruit still felt that it was not enough. It was still too slow. The green forest by the roadside was like a slideshow, the neat green fields in the distance, and the winding Zhu River to the east. These beautiful scenery could not enter Poplar Fruit's eyes. He wanted to go home. Poplar Fruit's mind was filled with thoughts of going home. However, it had already taken 3 days on the way back. Poplar Fruit had only entered Guangdong province this morning. There was no other way. With only one person driving, Poplar Fruit could only drive for a few hours and rest for a few hours. At night, he still had to find a hotel for Kiki to rest. If it was Poplar Fruit alone, he could drive for more than 10 hours. However, there was still Kiki in the car, right? Poplar Fruit could not take the risk with his daughter. In fact, Poplar Fruit could have taken a plane back. Before he said goodbye to Fat Dragon, he had the idea of leaving the Land Rover for him. However, Fat Dragon was really lazy. He said that he did not need to go down the mountain, nor did he need to run errands elsewhere. There was no point in leaving the car behind. However, Poplar Fruit was more willing to believe that this guy was being petty. If Poplar Fruit was here, he would have pestered Poplar Fruit to go to the county to buy delicious food. The food on the mountain was not complimentary at all. Fat Dragon's real reason was that he did not want to drive back. He was tired from the long journey. Just thinking about it made him afraid. Almost there, almost there. At least I'll be back in Yangcheng by this afternoon. Poplar Fruit thought about it, and the corners of his mouth could not help but curl up slightly. Next, I'll arrange a small modeling assignment. You can form teams to complete it. 3 or 2 people are fine too. The deadline is next Monday. In the classroom, the teacher on the podium said while tidying up the computer, "This is the last homework before the competition. I hope you can complete it seriously and show the attitude of a competition." After the teacher left, the classroom became noisy. The voices of more than 10 people discussing were not low. "Beibei, do you have a team?" A clean-looking boy pushed through the crowd and came to the front row to ask. Fong Beibei was a little absent-minded. It took her a while to react. She shook her head and said, "Senior brother, I haven't formed a team yet. Wang Di Beibei is my girl." The girl sitting at the same table as Fong Beibei smiled and hugged Fong Beibei's arm. The senior brother named Wang Di laughed and said, "Shen Hong, what are you afraid of? It's not like I'm going to steal your people. Didn't the teacher say that it's okay to form a team with 3 people? Then the 3 of us can go together." Shen Hong turned to look at Fong Beibei and asked, "Beibei, what do you think?" Fong Beibei was absent-minded. Shen Hong asked twice before she said with a red face, "If senior sister doesn't have any objections, I don't have any objections either." Shen Hong glanced at her classmate, Wang Di, who was looking at her with bright eyes. She shook her head and said unhappily, "Okay, you got lucky." Wang Di wanted to strike while the iron was hot. He said eagerly, "To celebrate our first team, how about we have lunch together this afternoon? It's my treat." Fong Beibei shook her head subconsciously. Shen Hong was also not interested in eating with him. She waved her hand and said, "Forget it. We're sisters. Why are you a man getting involved?" Wang Di shrugged and did not insist. He said, "Okay, then I'll eat in the cafeteria alone." He changed the topic and said, "By the way, since we've formed a team, we should set a time to discuss what to do, right?" This was a normal request. Shen Hong thought about it and said, "I'm going to the library to do some practice in the afternoon. Are you free tonight? I'll ask Auntie to lend us the activity room downstairs." School had not started yet, so there was no rush to use the activity room. "Sure," Wang Di said generously. "It's not appropriate for you two girls to come to the boys' dormitory. I'll sacrifice myself and have to deal with Abbess Miju. Tisk, as if you've never been here before." Shen Hong said disdainfully. "Isn't your girlfriend in our building? I've seen you waiting for her downstairs several times." Wang Di did not avoid it. He just corrected her seriously. "She's my ex-girlfriend." "That's old news. Why are you still bringing it up?" "Senior sister, I can't tonight." Fang Beibei held Shen Hong's hand and said coquettishly, "Can we discuss it tomorrow?" "Beibei, is there anything going on tonight? Do you need senior brother's help?" Wang Di asked with concern. Fang Beibei smiled. She shook her head and said, "Thank you, senior brother. It's just some personal matters." "Okay, if you have something to tell me." Wang Di carried his computer and waved his hand. "Two beauties, I'll go back first. Set a time and let me know on QQ. What's wrong?" As soon as Wang Di left, Shen Hong asked with concern, "Why are you so tired all day? Also, didn't you pull me to avoid Wang Di before? Why are you so abnormal today? You even agreed to team up with him." "Is it abnormal?" Fang Beibei did not answer. Instead, she looked at Shen Hong curiously and asked, "I think it's okay. I was very serious in class just now." "Forget it, I don't care about you." Shen Hong gave her a dirty look and said, "Let's go eat. I'm starving." In fact, Fang Beibei did not know what was wrong with her. Today, other than being fully focused in class, she was inexplicably floating in her own emotional world. Yesterday, Poplar Fruit said that he expected to be back today. Thinking of this, Fang Beibei felt happy and was in a good mood. Soon he would be able to see the cute Chi-Chi, as well as that stupid little golden retriever. Yes, there was also that bad weird uncle. Right. Too bad. After playing outside for so long, he still showed her pictures every day. It was simply infuriating. She was still in class during the holidays. Perhaps because she was in a good mood, Fang Beibei did not reject Wang Di's request to team up for the first time. After joining the school's team, Wang Di often hung around Fang Beibei. Although he did not shamelessly pester her, he was still very annoying. Senior sister Shen Hong helped to deal with him many times. "It's nothing. Isn't it just forming a team to do homework?" In fact, in the past 2 months, similar team homework had been done 3 times. The team composition was different, so Fang Beibei did not care too much about forming a team this time. After having lunch with senior sister Shen Hong, Fang Beibei wanted to go back to the dormitory to take a nap. However, as she walked, Fang Beibei looked up and saw that she had unknowingly walked to the ground floor of the teacher's dormitory. Chapter 644. Fang Beibei blinked her beautiful eyes. She was a little confused. She didn't know how she got here. Shaking her head, Fang Beibei didn't turn back. Instead, she hesitated for a moment, took out a bunch of keys from the side pocket of her small school bag, and unlocked the door downstairs naturally. She went upstairs, opened the door, put her shoes on the shoe rack at the entrance, and entered with her slippers. It was as if she had returned to her own home. It was very natural, and she didn't need to ask for permission. In fact, Fang Beibei had been living here for 2 days. Coming back to school during the summer vacation was not a pleasant thing. She couldn't sleep in at home, and she couldn't eat the delicious food her mother made. Her roommates had all gone home, and she was the only one in the dormitory. At night, the dormitory felt empty, and she felt very insecure. The teacher's apartment rented by Poplar Fruit was right next to the school, and it was only a 10-minute walk from her dormitory. Fang Beibei secretly stayed there for one night, and didn't go back. In fact, there was no one else in either room, But Fong Beibei still felt that it was better to sleep in Poplar Fruit's room. Moreover, the desk in the room was left by the former professor. It was more efficient to study on it than to study in the library where so many students were squeezed together. Until 2 days ago, when Poplar Fruit said that he was coming back, Fong Beibei reluctantly packed up her things and moved back to the dormitory. It was so familiar. She actually came back. However, since she was back, she might as well take a nap here. Anyway, the strange uncle hadn't come back yet. This was still her territory. Fong Beibei walked in wearing her slippers. She mischievously flicked the red Chinese knot hanging on the bookshelf in the living room with her slender right index finger. She bought it when she was shopping. The style was much more complicated than ordinary Chinese knots. This was a concentric knot, which meant forever concentric. Of course Fong Beibei bought it because she thought it looked good. She only knew the meaning after looking it up on the internet. However, when she moved back, she didn't know if it was intentional or not, but she left the Chinese knot behind. Uncle, you should decorate this place a little. Otherwise it would look gloomy and not nice at all. Fong Beibei thought so. Uncle is so unartistic. He won't be able to tell if I'm placed in front of him. In addition to the concentric knot, there were several decorations left by Fong Beibei in the room, such as the small porcelain vase on the desk. Fong Beibei did not bring it back. She was like a lively elf, tiptoeing around the room. After inspecting the small things she had left behind, she ran back to the big bed in the bedroom to sleep. While Poplar Fruit was away, the bedroom was much cleaner, although Poplar Fruit was also very diligent in cleaning the room. Even the bed exuded the fragrance of green apples. Fong Beibei was very sleepy. She yawned and rolled on the bed, muttering, "When Uncle comes back he will make the quilt smelly again." There was no fairy tale scene of the prince kissing the princess. In the afternoon, when Fong Beibei woke up with sleepy eyes, Poplar Fruit was still fighting on the highway. In the afternoon, the sun went in another direction. Except for the balcony, the bedroom was dark, as if the curtains were closed. It was quiet and sleepy, making people want to sleep again. However, Fong Beibei had a regular work and rest schedule. Although she was not as good as Poplar Fruit, at least she would not sleep in. She rolled on the bed and looked at the messy quilt. A trace of slyness flashed in her eyes. Fong Beibei jumped lightly onto the bed. The soft mattress did not hurt her feet. She pouted and kicked the quilt even more messily. Fong Beibei's bangs and sideburns were messy because of her excitement. She lifted her fair feet because of her flying kick. She opened her mouth wide and laughed wantonly, because she imagined Poplar Fruit staring in shock at the room that seemed to have gone through a big battle. At this moment, Fong Beibei's image of an obedient girl was completely destroyed. She was just like my daughter who had not grown up. Fong Beibei was very happy to play. Anyway, no one was watching. So what if she was a little willful? However, after a while, Fong Beibei sat down dejectedly. She pouted and was a little unhappy. It was true that Uncle came back to Yangcheng today, but would he come here? Fong Beibei counted with her fingers. He had been on the road for 3 days straight. If it were her, the first thing she would do when she got home was to fall asleep on the big bed. As for Poplar Fruit, his home should be that big house. Otherwise, why didn't he move his things here? Fong Beibei patted her pillow and muttered to herself unhappily. When Fong Beibei talked to Poplar Fruit on the phone, she did not ask Poplar Fruit to come directly to the teacher's dormitory. It was only when she heard that Chen Anlin had come to Yangcheng and was staying at Poplar Fruit's house that she complained. Fong Beibei was not a long-winded person, but she did not know if Poplar Fruit would remember her request. She had no confidence because Mrs. Fong often scolded her father, saying that men always had bad memories. It doesn't matter if Uncle comes back or not. Fong Beibei suddenly jumped up. This time, she did not cause any trouble. Instead, she picked up the small quilt that she had kicked off earlier and folded it carefully. As if possessed, Fong Beibei deftly arranged the pillows and the sheets. Fong Beibei looked at these masterpieces with satisfaction. Then, she turned her head to look at the picture frame on the bookshelf. In the picture frame was a picture of Kiki. She made a funny face and said with a smile, Kiki, if your papa doesn't come back, I'm going to take this house for myself. She pointed at the air as if Poplar Fruit was standing there. Uncle, it's not your fault that you don't come back. Then don't blame me for taking advantage of you. Hee. Fong Beibei ran to the living room. She found her small school bag and took out the competition book to read. Fong Beibei was very good at mental arithmetic. Occasionally, she would draw a line or two on the draft, but her reading speed was still very fast. In less than 3 hours, she had turned over more than 20 pages. Raising her head, Fong Beibei looked at the sky. She was confused for a while and felt a little disappointed. Forget it. Fong Beibei muttered. I'll go buy vegetables and cook. I'll reward myself well. If he doesn't eat, well, it's his loss. After locking the door, Fong Beibei walked to the vegetable market. Along the way, many aunties and uncles greeted her. Because in the past month, she often bought vegetables and cooked for herself. The food at school was really hard to swallow, so the aunties who sold vegetables all recognized this cute girl, who also knew how to buy vegetables. Xiaofang, do you have any guests today? An auntie asked curiously. At this time, Fong Beibei realized that she had bought 2 servings of vegetables. Fong Beibei didn't put it back. Instead, she generously handed it over. She smiled and nodded to the auntie without any explanation. After buying fish, pork, and potatoes, Fong Beibei went back. As she walked, she touched her small belly and lamented. Hey, why did I buy so much? Do I really want to get fat? Chapter 645. Panting, Fong Beibei carried the heavy basket and climbed up the stairs. Then, after a long time, she used her left hand to take out the key from her right trouser pocket. The moment she took it out, Fong Beibei suddenly realized that she was so stupid that she almost cried. She opened the door with a clatter. It wasn't locked? I remember it was locked. Fong Beibei opened the door in confusion and saw a butt at the entrance. Before she could see clearly, a clear and pleasant voice suddenly sounded from the side. Sister Beibei. Kiki. Fong Beibei looked over in surprise. A small figure rushed over from the side and bumped into the woman who was pouting, causing her to stagger. Kiki immediately rushed over and excitedly hugged Fong Beibei's leg and jumped up and down. But the basket in Fong Beibei's hand was really heavy. She couldn't free her hands to hug Kiki. She could only cry out in surprise. Aya, Kiki, you're back? Poplar Fruit, who had just been packing, got up from the ground. He smiled and said, You went to buy groceries? I thought you went back to school. I was going to put away my things and change my clothes before going to find you. Poplar Fruit reached out his hand, and Fong Beibei naturally handed the basket in her hand to Poplar Fruit. She picked up Kiki, closed the door and said, I didn't know Uncle would come back. You didn't know? Poplar Fruit scratched his head in confusion and asked, Didn't I tell you last night? Fong Beibei gave him a dirty look and said angrily, Who knows which side you went back to? Poplar Fruit smiled and said softly, I remember you said to let me stay at the teacher's dormitory when I come back. A smile immediately appeared in Fong Beibei's eyes. However, Poplar Fruit added, Besides, I haven't told Song Jiwen that I'm coming back. It's already so late. If we go back at this time, I'm afraid it'll be inconvenient for the girl. Fong Beibei knew that he was such a clumsy fellow, so she pushed him reproachfully and said, All right, I know. Hurry up and put the vegetables down. They're so heavy. Before she could finish, the impatient Kiki turned Fong Beibei's face away. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. The little guy had a lot of things he wanted to tell Sister Beibei. But as soon as they met, Sister Beibei kept talking to his father. How could this be? The little guy was very jealous. Poplar Fruit smiled and looked at Kiki, who was sticking to Fong Beibei again. He left them some space and turned to the kitchen. When he left, he kicked Gold, who was sniffing around Fong Beibei's feet, and said with a smile, What's wrong? We haven't seen each other for more than a month, and you don't recognize us anymore? After putting the vegetables in the basket, Poplar Fruit was about to wash the vegetables. Fong Beibei came up with an apron and said, Uncle, don't stay in the kitchen. Poplar Fruit was stunned for a while and said, You want to cook? What? You think I can't cook, right? Fong Beibei went up to Poplar Fruit and looked up at him with a fierce look in her eyes. No, Poplar Fruit quickly denied. In fact, he knew that Fong Beibei could cook, but it was a little ordinary. If she didn't pay attention, she might cook the vegetables. However, even if Poplar Fruit was a blockhead, he knew that he couldn't tell the truth at this time. Fong Beibei let go of Poplar Fruit's waist, raised her head and said, "Don't look down on me, understand?" Turning around, Fong Beibei skillfully picked the vegetables and said, "During this holiday, I asked my mother for real kung fu. If you still don't believe me, I won't let you eat later." Poplar Fruit nodded hard and said, I believe you. After that he wanted to help, but Fong Beibei pushed him away. Don't stand here and watch." Fong Beibei stomped her feet and said, "Go and pack your things, then take a shower with Kiki, then we can eat. You're travel-worn now, you stink." Of course, this was an excuse. Fong Beibei always felt that Poplar Fruit, the chef, was standing behind her. As a new little chef, she felt a little guilty. She might as well cook it herself. If it was burnt, she could secretly throw it away. Poplar Fruit took it seriously. He smelled his clothes and walked out with a smile. In the end, just as he stepped out, Fong Beibei closed the glass door of the kitchen. Poplar Fruit could only obediently pack their luggage. Inside the luggage were the father and daughter's clothes and utensils, which were easier to pack. However, other than the luggage, there were also 2 big woven bags, which were specialties from the Miaowei people. This would take some time. Seeing Kiki run over in boredom, Poplar Fruit smiled and asked, "Kiki, didn't you say that you wanted to tell Sister Beibei your story? Why didn't you say anything?" Sister Beibei said that she wanted to cook. "Chi-Chi is also hungry," Chi-Chi said without raising her head as she leaned on the stool beside her father and looked at him. As Poplar Fruit was packing, he slapped Jeanzi, who was coming over, away to stop him from eating the cured pork in the bag. This was not the kind that could be found in ordinary shops. It was black pork raised in the mountains. Poplar Fruit had eaten it in the Miaowei village before, and it was very delicious. Occasionally, Poplar Fruit would raise his head and look in the direction of the kitchen. Fong Beibei happened to be looking at him as well, and their eyes met. Although they were separated by a blurry glass door, Poplar Fruit could only see Fong Beibei's shadow in his eyes at that moment. Fong Beibei was the same. When they first met, they did not show much affection because Kiki was in the middle. It was as if they had just gone out for a stroll. However, the longing for her after not seeing each other for more than a month had already set off a storm in their hearts. Only at that moment, separated by a glass door, did their emotions slowly extend in their eyes. It was as if they had each reached out an invisible hand and touched each other gently in the middle of their eyes. The warmth continued to evaporate under the warm light. The two of them looked at each other for more than 5 minutes, and their necks did not ache at all. Fong Beibei was the first to succumb to Poplar Fruit's passionate gaze. She blinked and turned her head away shyly. Fortunately, Fong Beibei was still washing the vegetables and had not officially started the fire. Otherwise, the vegetables in the pot would have turned into a black lump in these 5 minutes. Fong Beibei fiddled with the vegetables in the basin absent-mindedly. She did not notice that she had washed the piece of Shanghai green no less than 10 times. Other than washing it clean, there were also a few holes in the leaves. Poplar Fruit was still intoxicated by the atmosphere just now. Even if it was just looking at the person he liked, it was still blissful. He had just returned from a long journey and was tiredly packing his luggage. Fong Beibei was busy preparing dinner in the kitchen, and his daughter and the dog were making noise at the side. This feeling was really wonderful. Perhaps this was called home. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.